Good afternoon. Today is January 11th, 2022, and we are welcoming everyone and ready to begin our briefing meeting. I think that I'd like to welcome Attorney John Quick, who's sitting in for Attorney Bruno today. Welcome, John.
Welcome.
Thank you for being here with us.
Welcome, and thank you for having me. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. And I think we have Attorney Bruno on the phone. Ms. Bruno, are you there? And we may have Mrs. Vaughn on the phone. Mrs. Vaughn, are you there? Thank you. Thank you and welcome. Okay. Today's agenda includes presentations on suicide prevention policy briefing, pre-briefing, and allergy management briefing, as well as attorney tips and an update of legal services. At this time, we will begin with Lori Brooks and Attorney Quick.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Brooks? The suicide prevention pre-briefing?
Oh, yeah, here. Thank you. So, Board, as I understand, this policy was circulated to you all in advance of today's meeting. It's a suicide prevention policy. As you see, that's quite a bit of to go over. Lori is here to answer any questions if you all have any questions, and I will turn it over to Lori.
Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to be here to answer questions today, if you have any.
Mrs. Morgan?
Yeah, and I apologize, Lori, because I should have tried to figure out how to rephrase this, but I'm looking at section 4, lines 138 to 147. And I read this and I just found it really confusing, but I didn't take the time to figure out how I would write it so it made sense to me. But I don't know if anybody else struggled with the sequence about what the who was a suicide prevention certified school, that's talked about in line 142, 143, and then how that relates to what's the section above. I'm sorry, can you just explain how this works?
Sure. That language was actually taken directly from the Department of Education regarding the criteria to be considered a suicide prevention certified school. We probably can wordsmith that a little bit to embed it into the policy. There are those criteria to be a suicide prevention certified school. There are 4 of them, and then when every school in a district is suicide prevention certified, the entire district may say it is suicide prevention certified as a district. The 4 criteria in there came directly out of the memo. However, we can make that fit in the policy a little bit better, I think. Would you like me just to review what those criteria are?
Yeah, I'm just asking you.
Sure.
No. I'm not even
Okay.
asking you to comment. If you think that you can wordsmith it and make it clearer, it's in your hands. I'm done.
That would be that would be an easy fix.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Jordan?
I would just like to know, how does this coincide with what we already have within our schools right now with the task? Ms. Fisher, what is it?
Yeah, the mental health task force and the risk assessment team.
The assessment team.
Crisis team.
Thank you.
Okay. So typically, so this is board policy evidently, that really sets forth the major tenets of what the school board is stating as our stance on suicide prevention, and the targeted and very intentional approach to saying that we will continue focusing on prevention, but it really puts it in writing as a board policy. This was also, the development of board policy was also mentioned in Senate Bill 590. Therefore, this policy is being brought forward in a more formalized manner. This is kind of the broad strokes from prevention to intervention to postvention that we're saying in policy that we actually put into play in schools when we're working through these concerns, in training our staff through our process related to helping students who are exhibiting or expressing suicidal ideation. And then also, if we have a student that has been involuntarily hospitalized or has a concern even outside of school about an attempt they may have made on their life, how we support them when they come back to school.
Okay, I guess I'm looking at this from the perspective of how does this coincide with this, into Baker acting, into everything else that comes before us, and to make sure that everything is followed and we have the right procedures in place, and even afterwards that we would have the right procedures in place.
Thank you. Okay, so.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Cassie Riddle. Miss Jordan, I think I can answer that. There's a companion policy that will be coming before the board. That's a mental health and wellness policy. We have not completed that yet, but that one deals more with the involuntary referrals in the Baker Act. So if you'll give us some time, we'll be able to bring that policy before the board at the next briefing. This one is simply to address the suicide prevention.
But yet they work together hand in hand. So how do we look at one separate from putting it all together, that's saying you have half the blocks but not all the blocks? I mean, that's my concern, is to make sure that we have the whole picture of what this looks like from the beginning to the end, and then after.
We'll be bringing that policy to you. We also have the process documents that address that. So we'll forward those to the board as well so that you can see everything that goes hand in hand with this. I do understand what you're saying, Ms. Jordan.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Board members, any other comments? Ms. Vaughn?
No, I don't.
Okay. So, I found this cumbersome, and I found it missing as part of Policy 4, which really deals with student discipline. I had some concerns about this being incomplete and not coming with a policy that does address what we are ordered by state law to do or state rules to do, and that is having the mental health teams and the risk assessment teams. So I feel like this should come back to us at another time when it's a more complete package and part of the process that's supposed to be taking place in schools. We've had a lot of discussion about this and had a lot of input, or I have anyway, regarding the process and the way the training and the implementation is working in the school environment. So, and Baker acting is like an intricate part, I think, of any suicide threats or indication at school. So that's my input. Mrs. Morgan?
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying. What I'm wondering is whether that belongs in policy or whether the board wants, at the same time that we do what you suggested and Ms. Bruno commented on, that we review not only the policy but the protocols. And then are there things in protocol that we feel belong in policy, or vice versa? But I think we're talking about two things together, and I agree that we need to have a complete presentation with respect to all of these services and policies so that the board better understands how we're executing the policies.
And I agree with that, and I think that when the policy dictates the process, so, and I think that we have some questions that have been raised recently regarding the process as it stands now, before we even had the policy. So I would like to see it be a little bit more complete and inclusive of all of that, so that when we review the process document, we'll have an understanding of what's driving that. And is it what the state is telling us to do, or is it our own policy that we've chosen? So, thank you. Any other questions or comments? No.
Madam Chair, just for
Quick.
clarification, I just want to make sure, would you like this brought back at another briefing meeting in conjunction with the other policy that was discussed, and then also incorporating Ms. Morgan's comments on the draft that was currently presented?
Yeah.
Is that the consensus of the board?
Board members, Ms. Morgan,
Yes.
Ms. Jordan,
Yes.
Ms. Patrica, and yes, and Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Okay, consensus of 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so. Next on the agenda is policy, pre-briefing for policy 4.223, allergy management. And for that, we will welcome back Attorney Quick and Candace Messenger, Director of Food and Nutrition Services, Chuck Bradley, Director Positive Prevention, and Wally Colon, Assistant Director, Health Services. Welcome.
And Board, it's my understanding this one's a little more time-sensitive in terms of moving it forward. So I know that this was provided, but I'll turn it over to Candace, Chuck, and Wally so that they can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, board members, Dr. Savage. We're just bringing this revision to a current policy, policy 4.223, allergy management, and we're updating this policy in a timely manner in response to our district's need to pursue a food option in our food service and nutrition plan. So I'd like Ms. Candy Messenger, if she would, to talk about that food need, and then we'll talk about the policy and then our response to make sure that our students are safe.
Good afternoon. So with the food shortages that we have experienced and the change in grocers, we have worked very closely with our new grocer and Collier County to our south to mirror as much of their menu as we can. They do not offer the WOW sandwiches. They have the peanut butter and jelly Uncrustable sandwiches. So that is one of the reasons why we're reintroducing the peanut butter into the system since it was taken out in 2004. We have worked very closely as a team, and our team is much larger than the three of us here, to make sure that we are doing this in a systematic way that is safe for all of our students, and as well as training our food service staff, which is what I'm responsible for. We had our first training this morning to explain the timeline and the importance of following this timeline after we get through the policy. So basically, this is a protein that is nutrient rich and cost effective for us. So that's why we are reintroducing this.
So to take measures to ensure the safety of our students, we've proposed some revisions to the policy, and I'm going to ask Ms. Colon to also talk about things that we're doing to ensure that our students are remaining safe.
Hi, good afternoon. So the way that we are alerting our computer system to see which students have food allergies, we are relying heavily on parent communication. They're filling out this information through their Focus accounts where they are letting us know that their child has a food allergy, in this particular case to peanuts. The nurses are running a report through Focus where they then in turn complete CDMS, which is our clinic data management system that we use in the clinic to be able to update their health alerts. From there, we run an additional report that we give to the cafeteria manager each either through email or hand delivered, where they will know which particular students has the food allergy. They flag their computer system, and as a child is going through the cafeteria line that they're inputting their student ID number, the cash register will be alerted of a particular food item. So that way the cash register, whoever's running at the register is able to know which food allergy they may or may not have on their tray. They will then remove it. Whenever we do receive notification through Focus that the parent has updated their account of the food allergy, the nurses are creating emergency action plans. These are pretty much step-by-step bullet points of things that need to happen within the school in the event that the child is having an allergic reaction. So it contains signs and symptoms that we're looking for. If the child has EpiPen at school, any medication or any steps that the staff member needs to take. If we need to alert the parent, alert paramedics, whatever the case may be. So these care plans are updated once we receive that notification through Focus through the parent. This information is disseminated to staff members on a need-to-know basis only to those staff members unique to the students. So it's given to their homeroom teacher, their special area teachers, substitute teachers, so on and so forth, again on a need-to-know basis. So in the event of an allergic reaction, they know what steps need to happen. So that is what we're doing currently. The nurses at the beginning of the year and throughout the year, they're also providing trainings to staff members, again, on signs and symptoms to be monitoring for. There's a possibility that a child can have an allergic reaction for the first time while at school. We may or may not have an emergency action plan for that child because obviously we didn't know, or the parent did not disclose that information. So we're still following general guidelines on signs and symptoms, when to alert paramedics in that fashion, okay? So we're really heavily relying on parent communication to be able to disclose this information to us so that way we are able to appropriately update our records so we know to quickly respond in the event of an emergency.
In addition to those measures that are being taken by our food and nutrition services and our health services departments, we're also going to be working with our administrators, our school leaders, to ensure that they're actively monitoring on campus to make sure that plans are being implemented correctly, and also working with our custodial crews and our communication department to make sure that things are being cleaned and the contaminants are being removed so that we can prevent that spread of allergens through the school. And with our communication to make sure that we're helping our students to understand not to share food, to keep other students safe, when, especially friends that may have an allergy, and also our staff, to make sure that our staff are actively monitoring to ensure that students are staying safe within the cafeteria and in the classroom. And so at this time, we've brought this policy forth to you to, as kind of the first step of a series of things that we're going to be doing, including providing guidelines to our schools to make sure that we're up to date and current and we're being proactive in this situation. So at this time, I'd like to ask if there are any questions.
Ms. Gittens.
I was looking at her. I forgot you're doing this. Sorry. Good afternoon, and thank you. The main thing I want to make sure that we have on record for parents that may be listening to this and hear just a little piece of it, to maybe explain that this is the pre-briefing and that they will have various opportunities, and maybe the attorney can tell us how that process goes, but that they will have, 2, 3, 4 opportunities besides what you're doing to ask their questions and have input.
Yeah, this is just the first step. There's multiple steps still to go, including public meeting at your regular action meetings. So this is just the very first step to bring it before the board, briefing, get input, so that when it gets brought back before you all. But yes, there will be availability for public input through the usual channels. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other, Ms. Patrica?
I want to thank you for being proactive on this issue. I feel like this has been an effort by people from different departments coming together for the best interest of our kids and to protect the district, so I appreciate that. I asked a question during our one-on-one, and I received an unexpected response from you, Candy. I totally did not expect you to follow up with me, and you did, and I was blown away by that. Level of detail and follow through and all of that. So thank you for that. I will tell you that I think I remember you all saying that we are not allowed to stock EpiPens in our nurses' offices, correct?
We currently do not have an order in the district that allows us to have stock EpiPen. So,
And do you know what, if anything, we would need to do in order to be able to do that?
we would need a physician that is willing to give us an order and oversee it. That's standing throughout the district. We would need EpiPens, parental consent, in order to be able to give stock Epi.
And those are hurdles that are incredibly difficult to overcome, am I correct?
Correct.
So this might be something that we want to talk about, guys, with colleagues, at our next opportunity with regard to legislative changes, because it's small and it's something that could positively impact our kids. So just really thank you for your efforts. You're really doing a great job. And to Dr. Savage, when we get staff in front of us and they show us their expertise, it really increases confidence in what we're doing on a daily basis. So I just wanted to provide you with that feedback.
Thank you, Mrs. Patrica. Ms. Gittens?
Okay, I have an additional question. You mentioned about needing a doctor to, and all that. And it's probably a silly question, but have you addressed this with like Alessandro or something? And is it that there's a big liability? Is that why?
We have made some outreach out to a couple of entities. I'm just trying to see who would be interested to at least have the conversation with us to see where we can start at.
Okay. And my final point is, yesterday, Ms. Giovanelli was asking for pizza day. I want to see the peanut butter jelly pockets that are awesome. You know where I'm at? Okay.
Okay, Mrs. Gittens has placed her snack order for today.
With
So,
chocolate milk, please.
Board members, any other questions or comments?
I would just like to say thank you very much. We had our one-on-one, and it was very informative, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And if I may, I would just like to suggest that perhaps in addition to our lobbyists, that we bring the EpiPen situation to our School Health Advisory Committee, which is statute mandated and has members from Ali Health and other, the Department of Health and other community organizations that deal with kids' health. So that might be a good idea.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Vaughn? Ms. Vaughn, maybe?
Ms. Vaughn?
I have no questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that presentation.
So, Board, we just want to confirm we have a consensus to move this on to the, there'll be 2 readings as per requirements of any policy before it's, assuming if you guys approve it, before it would pass. So just want to make sure we have consensus to bring this forward at a regular action meeting for first reading.
Okay, so we have 5 here, and Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. 6-0 consensus. So next, we'll turn this over to Mr. Quick and Attorney Bruno for attorney tips.
Thank you. We can start with, in your attorney tips, there's 2 PDFs you'll see. There's there's a board correspondence process document, and then there's also the board member special meeting request. Why don't we start with the correspondence process document, just mainly because that's listed first. And if you'll see in there, this is really, as I understand it, being done to just ensure that there is a process that everyone understands and everyone follows in terms of how correspondence gets created, approved, created, and then disseminated. So if you look, the first step will be, obviously, you need a consensus of the board to direct whoever it will be, whether it's the chair, the superintendent, or the board attorney, to draft the correspondence, as well as indicating who will be, under whose name the letter will come, whether it comes from the chair or the full board or some other, someone else is being directed. Now, the board at that point can dictate they can just move it and say, we don't need to review it again. We've given you, what we want. We trust what you'll draft. Don't need to bring it back for us, and send it out. Or the board can give a directive and ask for the correspondence to come back before it for an additional review and approval by the board. So the next steps, you see step 2 and 3, they're really kind of separate parallel paths. They're not necessarily sequential. 2 would be if obviously there is directive to mail it without further review, the correspondence gets drafted. The 1 is one path, and then 2 is where you get to the next path. My apologies. So under the second is where you'll get. Obviously, you'll get the directive. It'll get drafted, and then it will be forwarded to each board member for their input. And then the next step would obviously be reviewing, providing input and feedback directly to whoever it is that's been directed to draft it. Obviously, as you see noted in there, as always with the Sunshine Law, you should not be, to ensure that this is not shared with your fellow board members. It can be shared with staff and the drafters, but not with the fellow board members. And then once the changes are received, they'll be incorporated with copies provided to everyone for final review. And at that point, it will require a formal motion to be made to allow for it to confirm that this is how it wants to be sent out. And then obviously the final version will be presented to the board for adoption, and then it will be sent out at that point. There's a typo I note in number 5 where it has than, THAN. I'll make sure that gets changed to THEN, assuming that this is, we have a consensus from the board for that. But that's really just to lay it out to make sure there's no confusion as the board goes forward as to what the process is, who's going to be drafting, how it comes back to the board, if at all, and then how and if the correspondence gets sent out. So if there's any questions, which I see there are.
Yes. Ms. Gittens and then Ms. Morgan.
Okay, my question is regarding number 2. If there's not a directive to mail the letter with further review, the correspondence is forwarded to each board member for input. Somewhere in here, I don't know if it's number 2, I'd like to see added at this point, board member it gives approval for either, and I know I'm getting wordy, but digital or personal signature. And I'm not sure I see that in there. After it's all been done and drafted or whatever, at some point, we should be able to say, yes, you can use my digital signature or not. And the reason I'm saying that is because there have been times that has been used, and not that the board members wouldn't want to, but they were unaware, and then something comes up afterwards and saying, well, you signed it. Well, no, it was done digitally, and I wasn't aware when and all of that. So how can that be added in there?
Well, I think that that should probably be part of the motion, whether it's approved at the very beginning, where there's a motion made and if the board says we don't need to see it come back before us. I guess there should be a directive as to, well, there's a directive as to who's going to be signing it. And then I guess it should be probably part of the motion as to whether it requires a digital signature or a wet signature. And then you could also do the same, you could make it at the same, have a same point if a motion's made. So if the letter's drafted and needs to be brought back before the board for final approval, I think that's another point that you could give, the board could give directive as to whether they want a digital signature or a wet signature once it's been formally approved.
Well, I guess, yeah, it is in number 1. I still think that when it says sent for full board or board chair, that part I disagree with because we are one entity. And whatever goes out should be from all of us. And it brings another question that I have. When do we send out something on our own? Because I got my hand slapped a couple of years ago for using the letterhead that had my name on it, and I sent something there. No, you can't do that unless the board approves it. I wasn't aware of that. So in this one, I would prefer to see if the board approves it, then the board approves it, and we put all the board members' names on it. I don't see why it would mean one person at any given time.
Okay, I mean, and I think this is drafted to allow for that. It's also drafted to allow if for some reason the board, to give, it's drafted really to give the board the most flexibility that you can. So if for some reason the board wants, whether it's the chair or maybe the person whose district the issue may arise in, that they want that person signing it for whatever reason, it allows for the board to give the directive that, you know, person X be the one signing it, or it allows for the flexibility to say, you know, this is a board correspondence and we want this coming from the full board.
So then it could be worded sent full board or board designee instead of just chair.
Yeah, if that's, yeah, I mean, if that's, we could word it that way if the board's looking for, to allow for even greater flexibility, yes.
Fully works out.
Can we ask if anyone else has a consensus to do that, maybe?
Are you talking about in the responsibilities?
I'm sorry.
Or are you speaking about in the responsibility section, that little square?
No, in step 1, where it says the board must indicate under whose name the letter will be sent, full board or, and I would change it to board designee. That could be the chair, that could be, like you just mentioned, someone in their specific district or whatever. I hadn't thought of it that way, but.
Yeah, Ms. Gittens raised it, and I was just responding that, yeah, you could adjust that to, if for some reason the board wanted it to be, if it's in District 2 and they say we want the District 2 person signing it for whatever reason, you can make that adjustment if the board so desires.
And now, Ms. Morgan, before we, I mean, you have some input before we come to consensus.
Oh, not on this.
Okay.
I have a different question.
All right, so then, are we all in agreement that we will indicate the letter will be sent full board or board designee when it's from the whole board? Okay. So, Ms. Giovanelli?
I'm sorry, can you update me?
Yes, we're looking at process document for board correspondence.
Oh, okay.
The question was, as drafted, it currently is in step 1. It talks about who the letter's name will be sent under, and it says full board or board chair. And the question was raised by Ms. Gittens if it could be more broadly written to be board designee, which I responded that yes, that's the prerogative of the board. If for some reason they would like someone other than the full board or the board chair to sign it, that's appropriate.
Everybody's in agreement? I am.
Okay, and Ms. Vaughn?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you, so it is an agreement. And now, Mrs. Morgan?
Yeah, so I want to make clear that there's a separate process document for template letters from the school board. There is, didn't you show that to me? I just want board members to be aware that there is a separate process document for board template letters to principals or assistant superintendents. That's all.
Okay. And so, I guess we should have that to review then also, right? Has everyone seen it?
That was are you speaking about what we had the other day on one of our workshops?
Board response?
Yes, with Ms. McClung. And no, I believe it's what we sent out to our team for congratulations, and that we had to work on that. That was part of the package that, it was page 89, I think it was, on when Ms. McClung was going over that with us the other day.
Right, okay.
That we had those letters for congratulations for principals, assistant principals, and so forth. It was a standardized letter, so that was something that we would have to just update because of the fact that it has the branding, has to be correct on that, and
Yes, essentially, it was in our protocols, and we weren't doing it, I think in part because there was no protocol, and therefore staff had nothing to follow.
Yeah, the templates are set forth in your protocol manual. This would be for a different correspondence. So yeah, thank you, Ms. Morgan, for making that distinction, yes.
Thank you. Board members, any other questions or comments? Okay, so I have board stationery with my name on it, and I also have informal notes. So this doesn't apply to individual board correspondence. For instance, I recently sent a letter to a sports team in Cape Coral who invited me to come and participate in their awards ceremony, and I thanked them for that and complimented them on the event. And so I didn't get approval from the board. I wasn't aware. I mean, so individual correspondence can still be sent.
I think, yes, I think it depends on the nature of the individual correspondence, but yes, individual correspondence can still be sent, like what you're saying, if you're sending somebody to wish somebody a happy birthday, or you're thanking somebody because they invited you to an event, yet that would not apply to this. Individual correspondence does not apply, but obviously there are some instances, that's why I say it depends on what's included. If you're taking a policy position that's contrary to the board or that the board hasn't ruled on, that I think would be different and would need to follow this. But what you're talking about is completely different, and yes, this would not apply.
So then I guess my question is, do we need to clarify here exactly what we're talking about when we talk about board correspondence? It's an official board correspondence, which means it comes from the entire board, and it's already been agreed on. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, when the letter's speaking for the board,
Okay.
yes.
Right, okay.
No, and if I may?
Yes.
I thank you for that, because the first year I was here, I was told that I could not do anything unless the board approved it, and I thought, why are we wasting the money to get paper, because, you never use it. So I thank you for that clarification, that if it's something...
Well, I think we do need to clarify that, because
Yes.
I've been doing that for 11 years, and no one has ever told me that I couldn't do that. They gave me stationery when I got on the board, so...
Well, they
yeah.
did too, but anyway, yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I can speak with Kathy and so that this can be adjusted, assuming there's consensus to move it forward, that she can adjust it so that it changes board chair to board designee and then clarifies that what this is talking about is official correspondence speaking on behalf of the board.
So I'm just going to use an example. So recently, there was a letter drafted, and I'm not sure by who, but it was signed by the chair, and it's to a government agency. And I saw it when it was completed and signed, so we didn't do any
Signed.
approving of that ahead of time.
signed. It was not signed.
Yes, the one that I saw, anyway.
Okay. All right. Well, I got a copy of it, and it said Debbie Jordan, Chair.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Was it in draft format? Okay.
I didn't sign it.
Stamp on it.
okay.
If it's in draft format, that might have been circulated to the board for consideration, which is consistent with what this policy is talking about. So it wouldn't have been signed, and it wouldn't have been an official correspondence yet on behalf of the board.
Thank you.
It's coming up.
Yeah, okay. Thank
So,
you. Yes, Ms. Jordan.
I was going to say, this process document does say to create a process for disseminate official board correspondence. It does say that on here.
Yeah, and I'll talk to just if there's need to clarify that it doesn't include individual correspondence, like what we were talking about. We can make sure that that's clear.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Could I, yeah, I have a
Yes, please.
I think this is a good thing to have, but my only concern is that we sometimes have, or often have, time-sensitive letters that need to go out, and it seems to me that there doesn't seem to be a way to expedite. We had one letter that took forever and had to do with something that I brought forward the EDAC committee, and I don't even know. I mean, they were asking me about it, and this is just an example, and it took forever. And sometimes when that happens, it loses, the whole thing loses effect. So I'm wondering how we get around being able to take a look at the letter and approve it, and yet get it out in a timely manner. Does that make sense?
Multiple ways that you could do it. One, obviously, is if the board were comfortable to say, to follow the first process, which is we direct you to write this. We don't need to see it again. It can just go out without us having to review it again. That obviously expedites it. If short of that, what you could do is you could put some sort of time frame on it in terms of we want to see a draft by, I mean, this I would think you would want to make in your motion as to whoever the drafter is, so it's clear you're giving directive to draft a correspondence to person A, and on various subjects that you want to get a draft by a certain date, and then the board could either bring it up at its next regular meeting so that it could approve it, or if it was time sensitive and the board wanted to move it quicker, you could have a special meeting just to discuss that that correspondence so that you could get it out earlier. But it definitely would need to be approved by the board, whether it's up front or at a later point. And like I said, you can build into your motion a way to expedite that, and as well as move up special meetings to have it heard earlier.
Yeah, and the way I'm seeing it is actually would be
A 2-week time lag there because this board isn't big on special meetings.
that's my comment.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Mr. Pri-Bruno, do you have any comments?
I think Mr. Quick is handling it very well. I don't really have any comments, but just as the board has been discussing, this is for official business. As Mr. Quick stated, if you want this to go sooner, instruction by the board for it to go out either without the board's review or to come back to the board either to a special meeting at it or at the next action meeting for it to go out. This is really just to make sure that we do these official board letters in the same process at the same time each time that it is.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens.
I think that one thing I want to bring up is that there's, I think a different, I'm trying to say this properly, a different scrutiny or different responsibility if you are chair or vice chair, because as chair, when you send out something, there's the unspoken term that you are chair, so anything you send out to everyone outside, it is the chair is saying, and especially if it's something that we're going to be voting on. So I just think that, you know, whoever's in that position as chair has to be very careful not to give the illusion that this is from the board. And maybe even state in there, this is my personal opinion. because that has been done and it kind of causes confusion.
Yes, thank you.
However, if it is asked and a motion is passed for it to be set out by the chair is representing all of us because it has been asked to do so.
Right.
So that needs to be understood as well. The chair's not going to just put something out there on their own without.
Right, because I think it's almost assumed that when it comes from the chair, it's from the whole board. Yes. Mrs. Gittens.
And I don't want to go into details, but there was correspondence that went out from the chair that was not passed by the board, and it was assumed in the public and to the officials that received it that it was from the board. So I don't want to go into the details of it, but I'm just saying that did happen.
Thank you very much.
Not my watch.
Mr. Quick, anything else?
No, just want to make sure that this is something that it's okay to, consensus to bring back, obviously with the understanding the revisions that were discussed earlier, but, including with those revisions, it is something okay to bring back with consensus from the board.
Okay, so then we'll indicate by thumbs up if we agree to bring it forward.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Yes, it's unanimous
Thank you.
consensus.
The next item that was under that same agenda item had to do with, it's another process document. It is titled, I'll tell you in a second, Board Member Special Meeting Request Process Form. Again, this is, as I understand, was created to make sure that everyone is aware so that there's no surprises. Everyone's aware as to what the process is for creating a special, for calling a special meeting. First and foremost, there needs to be a request for the special meeting, and that request should, under this, should be made to the chair of the board, the superintendent, or and the board attorney. The biggest thing here in this first step, I think, also is that it needs to be clear as to what the reasons are as to what the request is being made. So you not just saying I want to have a special meeting, but have exact specifics, like using this Vaughn's example in terms of the correspondence. If we wanted correspondence to be expedited, the requester would come in and say, I'd like to have a special meeting so that we can consider this correspondence prior to our next regular board meeting. And then that way it allows for the next step, which is the chair or the superintendent, pursuant to your guys' policy, can grant the special meeting request. It does not need to go to the full board if they decide to. But this way, if they have all the information, they understand what they're granting. If the chair or the superintendent does not feel it needs a special meeting, this sets forth that if it's not granted within 24 hours, then the board members will be contacted, because a majority of the board under your policy can call a special meeting. And again, this will allow them to have all the information so that they know, what the reason is for the request for the special meeting. Then the staff will make a determination of from the 7 of you to determine if a majority of the board has determined that they would like to have a special meeting on that topic. And whatever the result is, that will be shared with the board so that the board is aware of what that result was. It'll be shared by the board attorney. And then obviously if there is a majority of the board that supports it, then the special meeting will be scheduled as soon as possible, obviously taking into place notice requirements and things like that. So it's just making sure that, I guess, formalizing the process. I know that this is a process that I know that we had some special meetings when I was here, and I know this was a process that was followed. So I guess it's really just formalizing that to make sure everyone's aware as to what to expect for special meetings.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs.
May I comment? May I comment? Hello?
I don't think she heard
She said
Judy
go
say,
ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I've requested special meetings a couple times, And I see kind of a gap between 1 and 2. I think it needs to be made more specific. I believe that in the past, not the policy or the process that we used was having, notifying, as it says in number 1, and then I believe it was one of our board secretaries that put the call out to poll the board. Is that correct? In the past?
Through the board secretary, yes.
Okay. So is it up to the board secretary to, let's say, kind of edit or maybe make the request more succinct? Or would it be something, first of all, directly from the requester? I have a couple questions.
I would recommend, to make sure there's no confusion, that the board secretary or whoever notifies that there's a request for a special meeting in terms of the subject matter not edit it, because I wouldn't want there to be any confusion if a board member is requesting one thing and it gets edited and makes it seem like it's something else. So my suggestion would be that it not be edited and that the request be stated as the board member made it.
Okay, and I think that's an important point. Secondly, if the chair or superintendent does not grant the request, does it automatically then go to whoever it is that's doing the polling of the board?
If it's not granted within 24 hours, yes, it should automatically, the board members should be automatically contacted pursuant to this process that's set forth here. So yes, it would be an automatic thing if it's not granted within 24 hours.
Okay. And this is something that hasn't been done, whether or not the majority support it should be shared. So in other words, let's say I asked for a special meeting and I'm the only one that wants it, and one other, the two of us watch it. Should the names come back? Or should it just be the vote? No, the meeting was defeated 2-5. Or should it be 2 people and name them support it, 5 people and name them did not support?
I think you
and
could.
That part's not in there.
Yeah, I think you could probably do it either way. I'm trying to think in the past how we did it. I don't recall if we specifically named everyone. I mean, certainly if there was if this was done via email as opposed to phone call, there'd be a public record as to how people, advised what they wanted individually. But I think you could do it either way, whether you specifically named everyone or not. I think that would be the board's call.
Be added, because in the past when I asked for a special meeting, I really had to go back a couple times to the chair and say who voted which way, and it seemed to be not something that wanted to be shared immediately, and I think for the sake of the requester and for public record, that as we do out of vote, even though this isn't per se a vote, that the names of the people who voted one way or the other should be available as part of the process.
Okay, I mean that's fine. I really think it's up to the board. Yeah. Madam Chair, I just wanted to make one clarification because Ms. Fawn used the term polling. I just want to make sure this isn't really polling. This is really an administrative or scheduling request is really what this is. So I just wanted to make one clarification there so there's no confusion for the public.
That's all I wanted.
So, Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, so I'm one of those people who doesn't support special meetings because I don't believe special meetings should be called for a conversation. Special meetings should be called in order to take a vote, a matter of some immediate need. And so my request is that the submitter of the request for the special meeting make it in the form of a motion, and that they talk with the board attorney before saying, in effect, I would like to call a special meeting, I would like to make a motion to this effect, because we get these calls, and I have no clue what the intent is. I don't believe we should have special meetings just to have a conversation. I believe we should have special meetings to make a decision. And I think that it should be very clear what the purpose of the meeting is. Now, it may be that the motion will be amended during the meeting and whatever, but at least I know what it is what kind of action I'm being asked to consider by the other board members.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Do you have any comments on that?
No,
Attorney Quick?
I mean, I think that's a good point, and it goes to or I think it goes to what I think is trying to be said here, which is that they be clear as to the reasons why the request is being made. And as Ms. Morgan got to, if it's to approve something or discuss approving something, I think, you know, that's, you want to make sure you're clear so that when the other board members are deciding whether or not they want to hold this special meeting, they have all the information the most information possible, so they can make the most educated decision in terms of that. So I think that goes to what the idea is in one, and then with regard to the others, we can certainly add in that the results, including how people voted, will be shared once, regardless of the outcome.
So that, Mrs. Giovanelli?
So I would agree with Ms. Morgan, because, I mean, the only reason to have a special meeting would be allowed for a vote, for it to be a vote. So to just have a conversation should be done at workshops and briefings. Otherwise, I don't think that there's a need for, otherwise we're starting to take the special meeting becomes just a regular meeting again. So I think we have to have a reason, and the only way to do that is to have a motion, because with the intent that we're going to be making a vote. So I would agree with her. Thank you.
So then, Attorney Quick, would it be best then to clarify that this is a special meeting, to take board action? Because a special meeting is an action meeting for the purpose of a business vote. So I think we should clarify that.
The only thing I would caution there in terms of limiting, I think you can, but if there are instances, say like at the beginning of the pandemic, where we didn't really know what was going on, and a special meeting, if you guys say you weren't meeting for another month and a half because of the way the calendar fell, it might warrant having a special meeting just to discuss something, and you're not necessarily going to take action on it. But that's an extreme situation, or it's an extreme scenario that hopefully we don't have to go through again. But that's my only caution there. But I do hear what Ms. Giovanelli and Ms. Morgan are saying, and I do tend to agree with them that, listen, if you're going to have a special meeting, it's to do something, otherwise it could wait. So we could certainly add that in. Again, like I said, the only trepidation I had with that was, what is hopefully a once in 100-year health issue. Hopefully it's not something we all experience, in the coming future.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, Ms. Vaughn.
Yes, I think it's a good idea to have a motion. I know the last special meeting I called for, I may not have been clear enough, but it was sent out to the board in kind of an amended form, and I intended to have a vote. But remember that when we take a vote, for the most part, we do have a conversation that goes along with it. So I would agree with what Ms. Morgan said and Mrs. Giovanelli said, that it's not just for conversation, but certainly, for the most part, there would be conversation that went along with the vote.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Then Attorney Quick, do you want to?
Yeah, what I would say is you could, as one, to accommodate those and say the board member shall be clear as to the reason why the request is being made and the proposed action to be taken, or something like that. And so that way it's clear that you're making a request for X, and this is what I'm proposing the action. And like Ms. Morgan said, the motion may change, your opinion may change after hearing hearing the thoughts of your fellow board members. So you're not tied into that, but at least that's something that it can be discussed when considering whether to approve the request.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
And I think that's very important because our process and protocols that we just discussed, I think, yesterday, or it requires us to give us let us know what's being asked, what the ask is, because otherwise we don't know, and then that just, I think that results in no action then because we didn't know what or prepared. So I think that we have to be prepared in the 24-hour notice is really important because we need to be. It doesn't allow for us to be prepared and to understand what the ask is. So I think that's actually really crucial to do the business. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Jordan.
Just one small thing too. What we have to realize too is that when we do ask for these, it takes X amount of days to even get these on the books. And we may have a meeting that very next day. So for us to have a back-to-back meeting when we can handle everything on that next day, and then the cost of advertising and everything else. So all of that is taken into consideration as well. So just, I guess, be mindful of all those situations that we have to deal with as well.
Fine, thank you. Okay. So then, Attorney Quick, do you want a consensus to move forward with this?
Yes, with the revisions that we talked about today, and I can work with Kathy and Benny to do that.
Okay, and Ms. Gittens?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, and Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, with the revision.
Yes. And this, obviously, I should mention, this gets added to your guys' protocol manual is where this ends up going. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. So, and do you have anything else under legal services?
Nothing under the attorney tips, no.
Okay. And then we'll move forward then, and I'll invite Mr. Dodig to come forward, and we will discuss the superintendent search timeline.
Madam Chair, there's an update on the Office of Legal Services. So sorry that wasn't clear. There was a second item under the board
Okay.
attorney, so.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, okay.
Sorry, Bob.
Sorry, Mr. Dodig. All right. So Attorney Quick, continue, please.
Yeah, so this is just, as you guys are aware, there was additional hires that were made in the Legal Services Department, and they are here today. This is just to kind of go through so that you guys are aware of the structure of your Legal Services Department, and just to make sure you guys know in terms of who is who is reporting to who. This is really just to go through that. So. Let me see. Oh, perfect. I got this. So as you know, your school board attorney is obviously Ms. Dupuy-Bruno, Kathy, who's on the phone now. You have an assistant school board attorney, too, Ms. Shana Zupke. I hope I pronounced it right, who I believe is in the audience. You can wave. No? Oh, she stepped away. Okay. Then you have your assistant school board attorney, one, Ryan Hudak. You have your staff attorney, Christine Schroed. Then you have your school board attorney paralegal. So there's going to be two paralegals. You have your school board attorney paralegal, Benarita Brophy, who's over on the other dais on the edge over there. There's a staff attorney paralegal who has not yet been hired. And you have the Legal Services Executive Secretary, Charlotta Wilson, who I think most of you all know as well. In terms of the setup, as to who's reporting to who, you have your staff attorney and your staff paralegal are going to be reporting to your staff attorney is going to be reporting to the superintendent or the superintendent's designee. Then you have the staff paralegal who's going to be reporting to the staff attorney. Basically, everyone else listed on there is then going to be reporting to your school board attorney, who ultimately reports to the board. So that's your setup for your legal services department. There's also a philosophy that Kathy had asked to share, which is really, what I think she's been talking to you guys about for a while, but it's just putting on paper, is really being more proactive versus reactive. There's a lot of legislation coming out of the state, making sure that your legal services stay on top of that, making sure the issues that are coming before the district, as well as any recurring issues, are things that they stay on top of, things like that. You have, and then just like she says, being mindful of the processes that are set forth, for the board or for the district. Then you have your general attorney responsibilities, and as you see, obviously with your school board attorney, that is going to be the longest group of responsibilities. I won't go through them all, obviously. You guys can read them. I won't read them all, but it's set forth as well in her employment contract with the board. But there's a number of items, really, 30,000-foot items, as well as ones that are ground level items as well. You have your school board attorney 2, which is Shana Zupke. She's really handling what best way to sum it up is really business services and operations. That's really, if you look at what's listed on there for her, that's what she's really going to be handling. And you have school board attorney 2, Ryan Hudak, is handling, again, best way to sum it up, handling HR issues, and personnel types of issues. Then you get to Christy, your staff attorney. She's really handling, did I get that right? Yeah. She's handling what I'll call academic services. So that's really what you're looking at in terms of your board. That's the breakdown and of the structure as to what you guys have. I know that some of them are aware, although I see Ryan back there. I don't know if Christine's back there. Oh, there she is. I couldn't tell with the mask, sorry. So I don't know if they want to address any of the things, correct anything I may have misstated. But if there's anything that they wanted to discuss, or if there were any questions, I know that they're here in the audience, and Shana, I'm sure, is when she comes back could do the same. I think she starts on the 28th, by the way.
Okay. Attorneys, do you have any comments? No.
That's not normal. We love to hear ourselves talk, I thought.
Thank you. Mrs. Patrica.
So for my board member comments today, I was going to ask the chair if she could provide us with a timeline for the board attorney evaluation that I think is upcoming relatively soon. And when you provide us with that timeline, could you please provide us with a copy of the board attorney's contract? Please and thank you. That's not really pertinent to this. I do have one question for staff, and probably Attorney Schroed. What is the timeline for hiring a staff attorney paralegal? Please. And then I have one more comment.
While she's coming up, I think her contract, Kathy's contract, was a 2-year contract that started in April of 2020, if I remember, if my memory serves me.
Yeah. I just don't know how long, when.
Yeah, there's other things built in there,
exactly.
obviously.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Hi.
good afternoon. So we have 7 very good candidates that we plan on interviewing over the next couple of weeks. We're really excited to meet all of the interviewees, and hopefully we can select somebody and get them on board as soon as possible.
Good, thank you. I wanted to make sure you're getting some help sooner rather than later.
Yes, we need it.
And then my last comment is on page 9, potential risks. What I see as a potential risk is settling lawsuits because of the cost of litigation, as opposed to following through and litigating when suits come to us that have little or no underlying merit. I believe that's a tremendous risk because it makes us the target of attorneys who will file those ticky-tacky lawsuits against us looking for a quick payout for those lawsuits. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board. I have discussed it with the board attorney in, one-on-ones, but I just want us to keep an eye out for that as well. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patrica. Anyone else, comments or questions? Mrs. Gittens?
Yes, and I guess I can, I had spoken to Attorney Quick about the contract as well. I can bring that up later. The question I have, if we are looking at potentially in the next few months having a new superintendent, if they walk into this situation, what are they told as far as their negotiations or whatever? Who do they go to? So in other words, if I'm a brand new superintendent sitting here and I see an issue that I think may cause potential harm for the district, do I look at the list and see who do I call? Do I call speak with the board attorney? How does that work? Because it is potentially something we will have to do.
I think Superintendent Savage has a comment.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. So it really depends on what the issue is. So the way that this is kind of framed up is that basically our legal services, we all work for the school board. While the direct employees are the school board attorney, the board auditor, and the superintendent, in reality, we all work for the school board. And so this attempts to, mirror more of what we see in a lot of other districts where the specialized expertise that you have is really driven by a particular attorney in their body of work, so that it more mirrors the organizational need and allows the rest to kind of work as one seamless team. When there are individual interests that may be, like, say, for the superintendent that are specific to the superintendent, then that depends. So if there's a conflict, that's another piece we didn't get into in this particular presentation, but that was something that we always have a guidance on, is making sure that we have kind of a primary conflict and then kind of a backup piece, whether that's outside counsel if it's needed or not. But in this particular case, if it were like a contract issue, then it specifically falls into these specific areas. I believe it's Shayna Zupke who has the contracts piece. But if it's an HR specific issue, that'd be Ryan Hudak. And that's not to diminish. This whole group still works together. So they still meet regularly. They still report collectively in terms of that piece as well. Does that answer your question, Ms. Or did you have a specific instance in mind that you wanted to ask about?
No, that's fine. I was just thinking ahead. We have a new person that doesn't know the lay of the land, and, do they just look through the list and go, okay, this person is who I contact? I was just wondering how that works. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Anything further, Mr. Quick?
No, the only thing I know on the nothing on the board attorney. The only thing I would ask on the board member under C1, there's a response. If since Kathy's not here and her phone was kind of chopping up, she asked if we could defer that for a future meeting. So I would just ask that be deferred, and then we can go into the C2, which is the superintendent. Or I shouldn't take over. I'll turn it over to you then.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you for helping me. Okay, so we're postponing the Cape Coral response, and now we'll move on with Mr. Dodig. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
And I just want to make clarity that my signature is nowhere on there.
I'm sorry?
Just for reference,
yes.
My signature is not on there.
It's in draft format, so it should not be construed as being approved by the board or even the board chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Can I say something real quick?
Please, Ms. Giovanelli.
Actually, I just wanted to thank Ms. Patrica for bringing forward the conversation to getting the contract and everything, because that was actually, I had made a note to talk about that too, so she actually stopped me from having to do that, so thank you very much.
4 meetings in a row,
I'll keep it track.
Ms. Giovanelli, where we've agreed on something?
Yes.
I think we can keep the streak going.
I don't know, I'm a betting person.
2023.
2023? Okay.
If you can get to 6, we'll have an ice cream party.
Well, my granddaughter would like a pizza party,
See,
but that's
I
just
told
saying.
you.
Yeah.
Okay. Good
Mr. Doty,
afternoon.
thank you, welcome. Ms.
So, at the direction of the board, we have met twice via phone conference with Ray and Associates, once on Friday right after the meeting with you all, and then once yesterday. Ms. Stillwell, Ms. Rivera, myself, Ms. Roman have been on those meetings. We have collaborated to come up with a timeline for the interviews of the semifinalists and the process, and we'll take you through that. There's a short PowerPoint, just 4 slides. So if you would look, the interviews, your interview questions, I should say, as previously discussed with each other, are due, not the questions, but the process, are due to Ray and Associates tomorrow. So I believe you've all been aware of that. The 13th, which is Thursday, we have asked all of you to submit, and this was Ms. Gitten's suggestion and process. We have chosen to include on the search group 2 school-based employees, 2 parents, and 1 community member appointed by the board members. If you could provide those names to Ms. Roman by the close of business tomorrow. And then each division will choose a representative also to participate in that group. The group will use the Ray and Associates provided impression form, and that form is at the end of this PowerPoint. It is a pretty basic form that Lauren could pull up. It essentially asks for strengths and weaknesses of the candidates. I understand there's some concern about the word weaknesses, areas of concern. I don't know. I mean, there's strengths and weaknesses in my world, but that's okay. We can change that if that's the will of the board. The groups will not meet as groups. They will review the videotape of each interview of the candidates and use this form to essentially assess them. They're not obviously scoring them, they're just providing strengths and weaknesses. That form will be transmitted directly to Molly of Ray and Associates, who will gather that information and then provide it to the board. The Zoom interviews with the semifinalists, and that's what we're calling the 5 semifinalists, will take place on the 18th and 19th. There will be 2 interviews, so 2 candidates will be interviewed on the 18th, and 3 interviews will be conducted on the 19th. From there, on the 21st, the group members that we just discussed will submit their forms to Ray and Associates by the close of business. They will watch the videos via the YouTube link as I described. They won't watch them live, obviously, when you're interviewing them, so as to not have other candidates having access to the interviews. You will then conduct a briefing or workshop. Briefing, I think, is being used so there could be public comment to discuss the interview results. And then on the 25th, which is a regular meeting, you would vote on 3 finalists from the 5 who we would eventually bring here. We have gone to this point with Ray and Associates. We have discussed potentially how this would all work after that, but we have not confirmed any of that at this point. I will tell you there is, because I think you all have FSBA at some point the first week in February, so I believe tentatively we've talked about bringing the candidates here on the 9th and 10th of February. So we're all within the timeline. We've had 2 good meetings with them, and this is what we have come up with. Ms. Stillwell has communications that she can talk to you all about, that we will be sending out to the public, to staff, and to obviously the individuals you choose to be on the group to participate in the search committee. So with that, I don't know if Ms. Stillwell wants to.
The most immediate communication we've sent to Chair Jordan. Up until now, these communications have been coming from the school board. So what would happen is that tomorrow after your vote tonight for the 5 semifinalists is that we would have a letter that would come from the board. It would go to all district employees talking about what's happened up until now, the fact that they can access the candidates' resumes on the website, which is they're currently there, and then they can go through those resumes and they can provide comments through the comment section on the website if they so wish. And then the letter goes on to say that we'll be interviewing the candidates the 18th and the 19th, and we'll send out another communication with the individual links to the candidate videos, at which point then they would have another chance of providing you direct feedback for each of the 5 candidates once they see the interviews after they've been recorded. So that would be a letter that could go to employees from the board office tomorrow. We could also share that out with all of our families throughout the district, and we were working on writing a news release, so it would also go out to all of the news media to say that you had, in fact, voted on those 5 semifinalists.
Thank you. Okay. Board members, Ms. Patrica and Ms. Gittens.
Thank you for working with them to put this together. This seems pretty clear to me. I don't know if any changes are going to take place based on consensus here, but I suggest that we adopt this tonight officially as a vote, this timeline. We've gotten some pushback from the community that we've made decisions via consensus, and if we could just sort of fold this into the top 5 candidates that we're approving, that might make life a little bit easier. Do you have a comment there? You're looking at me funny.
Me? No, I was just looking and listening, so.
Oh,
no.
okay. That's the first thing. The second thing is the first round of interviews will be a workshop, yes?
Yes, yes.
So,
No, I'm sorry, to review the candidates? Is that what you're talking about, Ms. Patrica?
no, I'm looking at my calendar. The first round of interviews are to take place the 18th and the 19th?
Correct.
Those
Correct.
will be workshops, correct? Yes. All right, so I'm going to suggest that we not sit at the board table because the communication and the sound and the ability to interact via Zoom from the board table is really, really poor.
Okay.
And so I'm going to suggest that we either sit in our offices or sit in our homes and be on Zoom that way and then record it. I'm seeing you shake your head. Does that mean we can't do that?
I would defer that to Ms. Jordan because I believe Ms. Jordan was talking about having those meetings be briefings so public comment would be able to take place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I would defer that to the board as to how you would want to handle those interviews. I can tell you that I would have to go back to production and IT to find out the best way because we're going to have a very short time span on the afternoon of the 19th to be able to turn around and post these interviews for the public because we'd like to get them up as soon as possible. So the less rendering we have to do, the less things like that from a technical standpoint would be easier for us, and then that way the public has access to them more quickly. So I'd have to go back and ask IT and production about being able to do it the way that you're suggesting if it is a workshop. But I think probably before that, the discussion would need to be if you want it as a workshop or a briefing.
Yeah, I'll just say to the chair and to the board, my experience of a Zoom meeting from the board table has been really, really poor. I don't know how I can properly conduct a Zoom interview from the board table. It just doesn't work.
Okay, I don't know if because we have to have it as a public meeting.
Right.
So how would we?
That's the other thing is that I think you have to have it open to the public. So doing it in your offices, I don't think would be an option, but I would defer that to the attorney.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be a public meeting. I mean, in terms of where people are, quorum really only matters for action items, and you're not taking an action on this.
Correct.
But it does need to be a public meeting, so the public would need to have access to it. But yeah, I mean, Ms. Patrica, if you were not here and were via Zoom somewhere else, or anyone else, but there does need, I guess I can talk to, and I can talk to Kathy, and we can talk to IT and to Bob and Lauren about coordinating this, but because it's a public meeting, it complicates it. But it doesn't. You don't necessarily have to have quorum present because there's not an action being taken.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Giovanelli, then Ms. Gittens.
So I have 2 issues, and it's a calendar thing, but I'm the 7th, 8th, 9th, and I believe the 10th, I am in Tallahassee for the Great American Realtor Days for legislation that I'm on that public policy. So I will not be able to attend that, But my other issue was going to be something similar to Ms. Patrica, was the logistics of how they would Zoom. Would they be up there for the public to see? I mean, we have to be
Yes.
available, but I mean, what's that look like exactly? Because I think that's really most important.
My understanding was, the thought was, is that the interviews would take place in the boardroom and be open to the public, and then the candidates would be on the Zoom link on both of these screens.
Okay.
And it would be one candidate at a time, because we don't obviously want multiple candidates in the same Zoom. So what would need to happen is that you would do the interview with one candidate, and then we would probably need to take about a half an hour break in order to redo a different Zoom with a new candidate and make sure that that was all working technically, so that when you started that interview, that everybody could see it and that we had it all working. So it'd basically be an interview and then a half an hour break to set up the next interview, and then the second interview for the first day. And then you do that for 3 interviews on the second day.
And we would be using our computer too to Zoom with them?
No, you would be in here just like like you did with Ray and Associates last time, where you would be in here and the candidate would be on the Zoom, but you wouldn't be Zooming in because you would be in the boardroom connecting with them that way.
So, but,
No, but. I don't think that's going to work out that great, just like she said.
I've only had my hand up for quite a while. Thank you. First of all, the suggestion to do it as a briefing was what I discussed with Ms. Jordan, because I was thinking we needed to include the public. However, I forgot about the fact that it was Zoom. And so I actually think that that may not work, doing that. My thought is, they're up on the screen. What's up on that screen we see right here. If we do one at a time, it's still open to the public to sit and watch and see, what's going on. I think technology-wise, that we should be able to, like we have done at other times, to just project them up on the screen, and we see it here. It's not like we're signing into this. I just think that it looks more professional as well if we are all in the same venue, if we can do the technology piece. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Gittens. Ms. Jordan.
and I was trying to respond to Ms. Giovanelli. From my understanding, if we were up here when we were asking the questions, they would be able to zoom in on the individual asking the question, because we would rotate questions. So if Ms. Fisher was speaking, they would have Ms. Fisher on one side and the candidate on this side. If Ms. Giovanelli was speaking, they'd have Ms. Giovanelli speaking and and the candidate on the other side. So in that respect, everybody would be seen. They would be able to be up here on the screens. And I know they've been trying to really figure this out because of the fact that it's a new day, trying to get everybody in on those dates. And I apologize for those dates because I had no idea when they looked at the calendar. So we definitely look at that.
I've had this phone and it's just been pointless. I don't know. I've tried to get it fixed and I don't know what to do. I'm out.
But that was the reason in having it here with all the cameras being able to be here, including, allowing the public to come in and watch, because it has to be an open meeting. I mean, I have 2 sheets full of opportunities that they have had. So it's not that we have been hiding anything or not doing, the best that we possibly can to get them involved and engaged. But I just think that we have to make sure that whatever it is, whatever you all, it's not me deciding this, it's us deciding this. Whatever's best for all of us, that's the way we'll go.
So my concern has been the candidates on the other end in the Zoom. It's garbled, we don't understand what they're saying. They don't hear us that well, because that's obvious half the time. It's the technology.
Yeah.
I
understand, because I've watched the meetings. I think between now and next week, it's incumbent upon us, Lauren and the staff back here, to come in here and practice to try to make sure that doesn't happen.
And
But go ahead, Lauren.
Sorry, I was going to say, we did that the last time, and what we changed from the meetings before to the last meeting that you did is that they actually now call in on the phone, so all the audio comes through the phone line rather than through Zoom. And hopefully this will be a little bit better in the fact that there will only be one person on the other end of the Zoom line rather than multiple people calling in. You will only have the candidate on Zoom. You won't have 4 or 5 people like we've tried to make work before. So, so yes, we absolutely would, come in and practice a few times and work on it and everything, but we have gotten a little bit better. Our technology is just so old, it can't support all these new things we want to do. So we're doing our best, and we're making some progress as we go. But we're hoping the fact that it would only be one person on the Zoom would also make a difference, along with some of the other changes that we've made.
And regarding the dates, in February, as I stated, Ms. Giovanelli, that's not set in stone.
Thank you.
We did consult your assistants
Yeah, it's not
relative
their
to your calendars, so I understand. But we're not, those dates aren't necessarily solidified as of today anyway, so.
Ms. Gittens?
Okay, Ms. Stillwell, you mentioned that they would be on the phone. In other words, they would do the video and all of that on a phone as opposed to on a computer? Is that what you meant?
So the last time we did it, everybody joined on their computers, but then they muted their computers so that we didn't hear any of the feedback on it, and they communicated with you via a phone line, a designated phone line. And that seemed to clear up most of the issues that we had the last time, to Ms. Giovanelli's point, were when people unmuted their computer or turned the speakers up on their computer, and then you start hearing all of that feedback, and it makes it hard to hear. Or in the other case of some of the garbled communication is because the people on the other end put their phones on speaker, and they try to communicate over speaker rather than actually having the phone up to, their ear. So, but again, hopefully if we only have one person on Zoom, a lot of that will be a non-issue. And we'll work with IT, because they've been really, really helpful on all of this stuff to help us get it to work.
May I finish? But I'm not.
Please proceed, Ms. Gittens.
My additional question had to do with slide 5, and I spoke to Ms. Stillwell about this. I understand this is what Ray and Associates uses, but in talking to various people around the state and how they do it as well, and to FSBA, the idea, I know you say weaknesses, but if we can, I'm talking about slide 5 on here. Is there?
Oh, we're on 5.
It's up there.
Okay, I thought she had a question about it. I'm just wondering if it could just be simpler, and that who is, now this is going to whom? This is what we're using, because.
Oh, this is the search group, the individuals you're appointing and the individuals appointed for each division.
So my suggestion is, and I'm not trying to tell Ray and Associates how to do their business, but we are a customer and we can have suggestions, that just to make it simpler, the candidate name, committee member name, and then just I don't know. I just think this is difficult, especially the personal qualities.
No, they're not being used for any other purpose than to guide the person in observing. They're not circling those, they're not checking them off. It just says, in observing the candidate's strengths and weaknesses, please consider the following areas. That's just guidance for the person.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
Ms. Patrica?
So is there a way that we can change item F3 for tonight to include this timeline? If the board reaches consensus to do that?
Item F3.
Yeah.
If I may,
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Can I ask a question about the timeline?
Well, that's what I was going to ask, too.
Because the timeline is to be determined. We have not, as far as Ray and Associates timeline, so which timeline are you?
Oh, this one right here that we just went
The one
through.
we just presented, yeah.
because that's not.
11, 12, 11, 13, 11, 18, and 19, 11, 21, 24, 25.
Okay, because we have that as the week of, on our timelines from them
I
already.
understand, but you know the feedback that we get from the community, taking
I see what you're
action
saying.
at a
Chair,
briefing
point of
meeting,
order.
an official.
Thank you for that explanation.
Okay, so then, are you finished, Ms. Jordan?
Yes, ma'am, I am. Thank you.
Ms. Patrica, anything else? So you want to change F3 for this evening,
Madam Chair, I do
which is
have
the
a
approval of candidates for interviews. Do you want to change that to?
Approval of candidates for interviews and timeline attached, and then we can just attach this timeline as backup.
All right, board members?
May I make a comment, please, before you take a...
Giovanelli had her hand up first.
Okay, I was just trying to do one thing at a time.
Okay. It has to do with what you're talking
Okay.
about.
Yes, please.
If we're going to change this, my suggestion was also, we need to mention about the, if we're going to vote tonight on the community, the committees that we're going to have, should that be mentioned in the vote, or is that a consensus?
It's my
About
understanding.
adjusting this.
Yeah, it's my understanding that tomorrow is the deadline to submit those names, so I don't think we're voting on that this evening.
Well, not the names, but if we don't vote something tonight, there is no other formal vote until after we've selected the names. We're not approving each other's names. What I'm talking about is approving the fact that we're going to do a community committee outreach. And it doesn't have to be in detail, but are we just going to say, yes, consensus, we're doing it without any formal saying we are going to add that component, is all I'm saying.
Madam Chair, I would mention in the timeline, there's a list, and so if the timeline is adopted as, it would also be adopting this, the superintendent search group, and in it, it lists who's in there, including the division. Each division will select a representative. So if it's adopted as it's presented in this document, then that would also, the motion adopting that would also adopt the makeup of that superintendent search group, which I think is what Ms. Gittens is talking about.
And this document is not it's not on the agenda tonight, is it, for, according to, as an additional piece to that?
That's what they're asking for.
Not as of right now, but Ms. Patrica is asking to include it, yes.
Right, that was the question. So in the meantime, I'm going to just defer to Mrs. Jordan as the action meeting chair to respond to that. Is there?
If Mr. Quick, do you believe that can we add this on with that for this evening in addition, or do we need to make that a separate?
I think you could add it in because it's, you're approving.
the search?
Yeah, it's part of the search. I think you could add it in, yes.
Thank you, Attorney Quick. Okay, so, Mrs. Giovanelli, you have a comment?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's only approving the timeline up to the 125, not the other discussion where I have a conflict. Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
Because I just want to clarify. Thank you.
I was trying to sneak that one in so you wouldn't be there.
Thank you.
So, okay. So then, do we need to do anything else now, or we have agreement that we're going to add that in this evening?
I think you get a consensus from the group and make sure that you can, and
Okay.
then we can add that in.
All
with
right. And Ms. Vaughn?
We lost her.
I think she left.
Yeah, I heard, hang on.
Somebody hung up.
Okay. All right, so 6-0 consensus to add it in this evening.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, Ms. Patrica.
May I ask, Dr. Savage, can you have staff who's here just update us as they go through these preparations and tests? I'm really concerned about the quality of the interview, but I'm also confident in your abilities. So I just want to make sure that when we come here for those Zoom interviews so if you can just update us, would that be okay? Please?
Yeah, just for clarity of staff's sake, what would that look like? How, when you say update, you mean like?
Just, we ran through 3 tests today and it's perfect, or we ran through 5 tests today and we can't get it right. Just whatever
Zoom
it
with
is they're
them.
doing.
You feel like that's,
I'm kidding.
you mean comfortable direction? You understand exactly what to do with that?
Yep, not a problem.
Absolutely.
Okay. So then, any further discussion on this issue? Okay. Ms. Jordan?
I just really, really want to thank Mr. Dodick, HR, Ms. Stillwell, and everybody but who have really been here to assist. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Okay, then if there are,
I'm just wondering, what is the process this evening? That will someone bring forth an amendment or addition to this action item? And I guess that's a question for the attorney. How does that work?
Who's it under?
I'm sorry, I was talking to Dr. Savage. I missed the first part.
No,
How does
I
what
was
work?
just saying, how will it work procedurally this evening to add an amendment to an existing agenda item? Is that someone will do that, or will it be on there?
It should be on there. I'll work with staff and we can get it added on before the meeting. And then you guys can discuss it, as, you know, either as a consent item
So
or
it doesn't have to be
however.
pulled or anything?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you. I just have one question then regarding the interviews. So all of our interviews will be done with the full board and each individual candidate.
Correct. Individually, yes.
And so there'll be no individual interviews between individual board members and candidates.
Not at this stage. We anticipate that being part of the 3 finalists.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much
You're welcome.
for that clarity. Okay. So then,
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Giovanelli?
One of the things I brought up is what happens if we lose a candidate, somebody drops off? Did Ray and Associates give you any direction of what would happen then?
Yes, in fact, that's why we're advising you to choose 3 finalists, not 2, because there has been recently a history of that happening throughout the country. So Ray and Associates advised us that 3 finalists is advisable at this point, in case that does occur.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Then, thank you very much for your support and help and clarifications. And now the next item on the agenda is public comment. And Attorney Quick, will you please address the agenda item of public comment?
Yep. School board policy provides the opportunity at this point in the meeting to address the board concerning any matter on this meeting's agenda. If you completed a public comment card, please put it in the basket provided at the back of the room. Please be advised that the board will not respond during public comment to remarks made by speakers. Speakers who fail to follow proper decorum in the chambers will be ruled out of order. Any speaker continuing with such remarks will be required to relinquish the microphone per Board Policy 1.11 and may be removed from the chambers. There will be one warning. Per Board Policy 1.11, the time per speaker is 3 minutes. You will find a countdown on the big screens in the front of the room. Once your time has elapsed, the microphone will automatically shut off. Please state your name when you approach the microphone. I will call your names, 5 speakers, well, 3 speakers at a time because we have 3. Please follow staff's direction when lining up. Madam Chair, there are 3 speakers that wish to address the board at this briefing.
Thank you very much.
And those 3, if you will line up, is Denise Nystrom, Tara Jenner, and Christine De Vigili. And apologies if I mispronounce that. No, thank you. Did it start or not?
Not yet.
No. For the clock.
See, let me try this again. Oh, she's going to start it there because it's working on mine, but not. Okay. Thank you. No, not working this side? Maybe start. No.
Thank you for your patience.
Mr. Quick, if it worked, that light will go off on that one, too.
Thank you.
What?
The light goes off over there.
Yeah, it's not, I can always just do it from, yeah, it's working on here, but when
It's not showing up there on the screen.
Right.
Right, so you just can start them.
yeah. Yeah, why don't I start and then I'll give you, you want like a 1-minute warning when it gets close to, okay. All right, starting now.
Denise Nystrom. Today I am speaking about the school lunches and why the quality of the food that is served to our children has been awful since the beginning of the school year. On June 7, 2020, Board Member Patrica sent an email to Attorney Bruno asking if the school district would cancel the Oaks contract, thus beginning the process of canceling a local food supplier that was serving top quality food to our children for 8 years. The net result, the Oaks contract, a $50 million contract, was canceled and the district hired U.S. Foods, who has been unable to fulfill their responsibility to feed our children because they have been subject to food shortages and the food that has been served is subpar. And now, U.S. Foods has canceled their contract with us. Yesterday, the board discussed purchasing $35 million worth of refrigeration as a stopgap measure for food storage. School district employees worked furiously to fix a huge problem that they did not create. I felt really, really badly for them today. The school board should not have canceled its contract with Oaks Farms, something the board decided to do without going to a public vote. And Oaks has no food shortages. Now you are in a huge lawsuit with Oaks, and the kids are suffering. Take the $35 million, please, and right this wrong. Settle with Oaks' contract so that our kids can eat quality food and that the staff does not have to come up with solutions to a terrible situation that you folks did create. As a community member, I want it on record that $35 million of taxpayer monies should not be spent on refrigeration. It should be spent on settling the contract with Oaks Farms. Thank you.
I'll do the same. I'll give you the prompt as when I start, and then I can give you 1 minute and then 30 seconds as we go along.
Thank you. Tara Jenner, recovering attorney, retired out of the state of Texas. There are big discrepancies between what is said and what is done in your legal department. I find the legal department has failed to be proactive, mindful of the process, and compliant with our policies. This directly impacts legal risks to the district. Last Tuesday's workshop on the superintendent search embodied many examples of these concerns. 10 candidates were reviewed, but contrary to Board Policy 1.114A, the board did not get the backup material until the Sunday before, which did not meet the 2 business day requirement currently in your policy. Also, that policy specifically states that the agenda and backup material should be made available to the public and posted on the district website when provided to the board. Given the fact that we did not get this information until 14 hours before the meeting, you have not met your policy requirements. This is important, especially when we also only got access to the CVs, and in the case of those that provided the cover letters, but the board actually got copies of reference material and other documentation, which to date has not been supplied to the public. This is a real problem. The entire superintendent search has been flawed from the get-go. The district is focusing on a stupid timeline rather than the quality of the candidates and properly evaluating who it is that we would be potentially having sitting in the seat up there on the dais. I'm looking at this and I've been following very carefully. You guys know I come to these meetings on a regular basis. I was the only one sitting in here on Tuesday last week for 7 solid hours after being up until 2 o'clock in the morning talking to the only board member who was willing to speak with me. 14 hours before a board meeting when we do not have the opportunity to speak because it's a workshop prevents us from evaluating those candidates, looking beyond what they send us, which is obviously going to be only glowing information that they want us to have and nothing that's potentially contrary, is a disservice to you and to us because we can't even follow up with emails to you to give our input in writing in anticipation. You're spending so much time focusing on all this stuff. Ms. Patrica today just got through saying, oh, we've got all these problems with Zoom calls. If I don't miss my memory here, you were the one that insisted that we do it by Zoom calls on the first round when it was optional for us to have them in person because we had the budget to be able to accomplish that.
30 seconds.
I'm just at a loss as to how you guys do this. Ray and Associates also has not been adequately informing the public on events that have been coming up for public communication. It was early October that we last had anything on the website dealing with the online questionnaire. You know I would have shown up at any public meeting if it had been identified, and it was not. So there has not been adequate public communication. You can say it all you want to, but it has not happened. This has been a big failure from day one,
Jenner,
and it tells
time
me
is
the
up.
legal department how.
Thank you.
Christine DiVigili. Man, shame on me for missing the last few workshops. I thought I could watch them on YouTube considering there's no public comment, and I could trust that some of you wouldn't try to get away with murder, that I won't make that mistake again. Anyway, on to the issues. Policy 4.223. This is the equivalent of putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. The community, your constituents, they want Oaks Farms back in our schools. And if the board isn't prepared to mediate, the community deserves a reason why. There is no good reason the district is scrambling right now to feed our kids. And the answer is not spending $35 million to create your own cold food storage facility to store all the bulk food you'll need to then distribute to all of our schools, especially when you say you can't even afford to give bus drivers raises or hire more teachers in Paris. The community is begging you to lose your pride and stay in your lane. In other words, focus on providing our children a quality education, mediate with Alfie Oaks, and let him do the job of providing fresh food to our schools. Next, agenda item C1, Cape Coral response. Literally, all I have to say about this letter is this. How do you insult the city of Cape Coral without directly insulting them? You send them this letter. That is all. I look forward to some form of response from you today, as do the community members that are currently watching you right now.
That concludes the public comment.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments, ladies. We appreciate your attendance. I apologize. Thank you for your comments. We appreciate your attendance and your input. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is board member comments. And today we'll begin with Mrs. Giovanelli.
Actually, I don't have anything other than I have not received for the I-5, I have not received the prior cost for 3 years to include the power buying contracts, and that's for the superintendent. Still waiting on that. If I received it, I haven't checked my email this morning. I mean, I checked it here since I've been here, and I haven't seen it. Where would it be coming from?
I have an email from Ms. Millay here, and I'm just looking to see who's on the recipient list here. Now, this is for the grocery costs and meal serves from 17-18 through 21-22. So would that be what you were requesting?
Please, thank you.
If this has not been passed on to the board, I will make sure they send it out right away.
Thank you.
To all of you board members.
And I just had a great, I'll finish up real quick. I had a great walkthrough with Lee Virtual, and I look forward to their presentation when we have our briefing on that, I think, briefing. So I'm excited about that for everybody to also see and hear what's going on there. They are very busy, and they have a very large group of students.
Thank you. Fine. Mrs. Patrica.
So I think our last board meeting was December 7th. I was unable to attend last minute because of a family emergency. So I'm going to give my comments from that night. Unfortunately, they're not timely, but some of our staff and students deserve recognition, so I'm going to give them now. We had our Florida School Boards Association annual joint training in Tampa. And as the president, I got to bring in some of our students and highlight their just exceptionalism, I guess is the word I would use to describe it. Typically the FSBA president brings in entertainment, like arts, like singing, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. And with Ms. Stillwell's help, we were able to put together what I think was a really good showcase of our students and their talents. And when I say with Ms. Stillwell's help, I mean there's no way this would have happened without her coordinating with the schools and the principals and the teachers and everybody. She really did a phenomenal job. So North Fort Myers High School, their choir sang the national anthem while the Dunbar High School color guard did the color guard thing. Master Sergeant Berube is their JROTC instructor who was there with them. Jasmine Seda, Mariana DeSantiago, Jason Fernandez, Treveza Robinson, and Donna Cortez were there. And I interviewed two of the students. One I interviewed on the International Baccalaureate STEM program, and the other I interviewed on the Microsoft Center of Excellence that they have there. And they were incredibly well-spoken and fantastic representatives of Dunbar High School and those programs. Next, we had a contingent from Eastleigh County High School, and their culinary program was there. Principal Melissa Robery was there, along with Chef Phillips and Miss Gastineau. The students present were Tashina Clark, Monica Tovar, Carlos Martinez, and Juliet Cash. And I did interview one of the students about her experience in the program and what she plans to do with her future, and her regard for her instructor could not have been higher. It was palpable as she was discussing her experience in the program and the way Chef Phillips has changed her life. It was fantastic to see. In addition, they came with boxes filled with treats they had made. They made them in their kitchen at Eastleigh County High School. They packaged them in Eastleigh County High School materials. They were branded for Eastleigh County High School. And throughout the rest of the conference, I walked around and saw those boxes and received compliment after compliment after compliment of how delicious the food was that was in those boxes. So thank you to East. You guys are awesome. And then finally, Bonita Springs High School came in and they did a presentation on the big screen of flight simulation. And Dr. Downs was the instructor. So while the kids were conducting the flight simulation, Dr. Downs was discussing the program. And I said this at the conference, Dr. Downs is on a list, along with some other highly qualified people, to actually be an astronaut that goes into space. That's who we have teaching it at Bonita Springs High School, a guy on the list to go to space. Not something I'd want to do, but kudos to him, that's amazing. The students present were Grady Bonin, Robbie Stewart, Maxwell Burks, Louis Novotny, Jay Arthurist, I'm sure I'm saying that incorrectly, and Cooper Rasnick. I got a lot of really positive feedback, as I'm sure my colleagues did who were there, and somebody said that the look of pride on Dr. Savage's face to see our students' accomplishments showcased in front of so many educational professionals in the state of Florida was fantastic. So I just thank you to Ms. Stillwell, thank you to our staff, thank you to our students. It was really a great day. Two more comments. The instructional continuity plan has been accepted by the state of Florida. I know that was a team effort, I believe spearheaded by, again, Ms. Stillwell and, Terry, right?
Oh, Kennedy.
Terry Kennedy? Yes, no, maybe? Is somebody shaking their head for me? Yes. So I know that was a team effort, and I believe it came to the board, or we had the impression at some point that it had been rejected by the state, which was not the case. However, I do understand that required a lot of work. Jumping through state hoops for anything is always a challenge, and it was done, and I appreciate that. And my last comment is thank you to Attorney Quick for being here. Your presence has been seamless. It's almost as if you never left. So thanks for filling in short notice. And honestly, I mean, your expertise on the subjects you discussed, I wouldn't know that you hadn't been here last week and the week before. So appreciate it. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patrica. Ms. Jordan.
Okay, so you had asked about the contract. The contract has, for the attorney's contract and the evaluation, so everybody should have already received that. That has already been sent out to you all. And it must take place by April the 15th. And currently, the evaluation timeline is being worked on at this time. So just so that you are aware of that, because several of you have asked. So that's already being taken care of. And just been real busy with the search and working with everybody, to try to make sure that that's taken care of in a timely manner, and making sure that we do include everyone in that process. And that's really all that I have right now. So thank you. And thank you, Mr. Quick, always. It's a pleasure to always have you here.
Thank you very much. Okay, and now we'll have Ms. Gittens.
Okay, and I have lost an email that I sent to you all. A couple of things that I have to talk about. Well, let me just do this one first. The Finance Advisory, I didn't give you an update on that. Just a couple of things from that last meeting on December 15th. The committee passed unanimously to have their meetings throughout the summer. A suggestion was made to have a hotline for parents or students to call if they see something not working out properly in school. And remember, this is finance, not audit. Jimmy Thompson from the Maintenance Department presented to the committee the process which Maintenance Department uses to vet their projects and procedures. The discussion was made about the need for a technical school in the East Zone. It was agreed with the committee that we need to show the public what we have been accomplishing with the sales tax dollars. And one of the, I don't know if you watched the video, but one of the suggestions is that when we have the signs that say your tax dollars at work, that we're able to say what percentage or part of that total dollar amount. And as we are, it's, as one person said, it's all about the marketing and preparing that if in a few years we want to bring this up again, that we need to be able to show now how effective it was. Future discussions they want to do around inflation and labor problems, and how we're handling it, how it affects us financially, not to have enough people, discussion about, giving stipends and additional monies to individuals coming on to do the job, and how does that affect the morale and everything else of other current employees. So they were into quite a bit of discussion about all those things. Very good group, and I'm very proud and happy to be working with them. Great questions and comments and all. I'm trying to find, for some reason, I sent you guys the thing on the, can somebody just send it to me? I don't know what I did with it. I know, and I'm not finding mine. This is what's crazy. I'm looking for the one on the audit committee. If someone has it up. Professional services agreement. Okay.
Just send it to you.
You did? Thank you. Look in here. Got it. Nope, it'll only just show what you sent. I mean, that you read it. There it is. There it is. There it is. Okay, so as I was saying about the audit committee yesterday, first off, there's discussion between the attorneys and Mr. Cohen and some of the officers of the leaders of the committee about being able to, how we can actually keep confidential things confidential. And so the committee has discussed it and continued to look at the legalities of it. And their main concern is if we're talking to, let's say, even if it is an RSM, but we're talking to our auditor about a specific situation, the ability to name a name or talk about the situation specifically. And so they're working on the details of that. I know that the board has the ability to say that and decide if our committees do. But one of the things that was brought out is that this is an audit committee as opposed to an advisory board, which makes it different. And it makes it different legally. So that has not all been ironed out yet, but I just wanted you to know that. And I spoke with the chair about our conversation on the dais yesterday, and I will read his comment so that I don't mess it up. And he stated, "We held a special meeting by Zoom on December 17th. The purpose was to follow up on the board's request," and added, "This was agreed upon by the board to find out our best plan of action and the urgent need to be in statutory compliance, and that is to have a board auditor." There was discussion regarding the legalities, televising, and all of that. And he says, "The audit committee is meeting on January 20th at 10:30 with RSM to discuss the audit plan and proposed statement for work for the coming audit year. Based on that discussion, the committee will prepare a recommendation for the board approval related to the audit plan. The meeting is being held via Zoom at the request of RSM, and please contact me with any questions," and that's from Paul Cohen. The board wanted to know and to take the question to the audit committee, what can we do and what should we do, in your opinion, to be in compliance with our audit? So the discussion was that we would, to expedite, the quickest and easiest thing was to ask if RSM could, in fact, for like a 6-month period, do that job, since they had already done it. The comments from the board members, the committee members, were, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible at this time, to find someone to fill that position. And these are people that are in the field that say it's hard to find someone at this point to do that. So while we are looking still that to do a 6-month with RSM, they looked at and spoke with RSM, and they looked at the not investigations, but the audits that they had done while they were here. They understand that there was a list and a priority that the board set. So they talked about the ones that were done. They talked to them about some of the discrepancies that they felt in how it was done, and if those things could be corrected if they did choose to do a 6-month stint with us while we are looking for another. They would decide too if they would be in the running during that 6 months if we chose different groups or individuals, that they could possibly be in the running. The bottom line to it was their question, well, what would this look like? Therefore, the discussion of the statement of work came up, and Attorney Bruno was there. And so it was, we're looking at a statement of work that was from previous. How can that fit now and short term, if that is the case, that they are available? We had the meeting on the 17th of December, and most of their people that they needed to check with were going to be away for that next couple of weeks. We looked at the calendar as far as the meetings, and the reason we put this on the 20th, we were trying to get an answer and a proposal to present to the board as to how we can move forward within a timely manner. That's why we're meeting by Zoom on the 20th with RSM again to discuss what their findings were with this with the attorney. So that's how all that came about. There was not any, clandestine meeting or something that no one knew about. and no decisions, and Mr. Cohen wanted to make sure that we said there were no decisions made. We are going through a process to bring back to the board information to allow the board to make an educated decision on this matter. And are there any questions? Is she still on? Because I know she had questions. Ms. Vaughn is on, or no? She's off.
Mrs. Vaughn? Ms. Vaughn?
She's not on?
Okay.
Okay. All right, so that was the audit, that was the finance. Before I get to the MLK piece, I got several phone calls and correspondence after our meeting yesterday. And one of the things that stuck in my mind, I want to say first of all, because of the conversations that I had, I want to let staff know I'm not the ogre that they try to make me be. I will be supporting the agenda item that was brought forth yesterday about continuing to renovate the old lamps, with the caveat that, and the reason is because we desperately need seats for middle school, especially in the East Zone. And let me go to this, hold on. And it's the urgency that comes in is that on the 17th of January, we open up school choice. And if we open up school choice without explaining about that middle school that is not completed, we're doing a disservice to the community. The discussions and the requests that I would make is very simple. That we give the community an opportunity to, number one, name that school as all other schools in the district have had the opportunity, every other community. We have a process, we have a plan, we have a policy as to how it goes. And that would be the second time in less than 2 years that that community has not had the same opportunity as everyone else. The Lambs, the new Lambs school, we have no idea who made the decision, but it was named and set, and this is what was going to go. The board didn't vote on it. The community didn't have input. And when we say community input, it's more than just the current people that are at VPAA. It's a community situation. And along with that, I would like to suggest that based on all the comments and everything from the people we have talked to in the community meetings at VPAA, it's overwhelming that they want their school to stay as it is. They want a K through 8. And they have said it over and over again. I've gone to all the meetings and they continue to say it. So why can't we leave Veterans Park Academy as a K through 8 and have the school in the back be a middle school? What that would do would be in 2023, we would have immediately close to 1,000 seats for middle school students. We could close down as many as 40 portables by doing that. The portables are going to be moved. We heard yesterday, you're going to move a lot of the staging portables anyway from Lehigh to Franklin Park. And that's a concern that if, what happens then to the staging if we do that in the East Zone? So a simple thing, by 2023, the fall, we finish off the renovations at the old school. We give the community a chance, the true full community, a chance to weigh in on what to call it. And the third thing, which will be the draw for school choice, is to start it at the same time as the K through 8 VPAA. It would be the only middle school that would start early. And that would be a draw, because some parents that have middle school students and they start at 9 or 8 in the morning, and I've heard from parents that say, it is an issue for them because they have to go to work, and what happens between those hours. So we have an opportunity to have a middle school to get rid of some portables, to have a middle school with the draw of starting early, and giving the community an opportunity to name their school and to truly have say-so in what is going on in their community. And, of course, providing 1,000 seats that we don't have. What happened, in case everybody is not aware, when Lambs moved to the new building, they only took 1,200 and some students. The remaining 200 and something were put into Veterans Park for the most part, and therefore the 4th and 5th grade got displaced from Veterans Park. I have gotten numerous letters and emails and calls from Veterans Park parents and staff, and all. They just want to leave it as the K through 8 Veterans Park. And they've said it over and over again, and I can share those emails. So all we're asking is, yes, finish off Lambs, make it an early start middle school, and allow the community to have some input in that. Why am I bringing this up now? Because someone brought it to my attention last night and this morning. School choice is going to start. If we don't get a head start on that and let people know that there's a good opportunity here to do something different, then, and I can say too, the parents and people at Veterans Park are feeling like unsure what is really going to happen. We need to just make the decision and tell them what is going to happen with the building in the back. And school choice starts on the 17th. We can say, make a direction to just make this happen. Any questions or whatever on that?
Ms. Patrica.
Yeah, so Dr. Atkins, could you, Dr. Savage, could you provide us with data regarding the displacement of students at Veterans Park? As Ms., oh my gosh, I was just going to call you Ms. Vaughn. As Ms. Gittens just stated, can you get that data to us so we can see how many students in 4th and 5th grade were displaced as a result of moving students from the old Lambs to the new Lambs, all of what she just said? Can you get us that student assignment data, please?
Yes, I'll be happy to have staff show all the numbers of students who are currently on which campus. We'll try to get all the pertinent information of what's transpired this year in terms of students and whatnot.
That'd be great. And then also, could you refresh the board's recollection regarding the community forum that was held out there and the trend data that came out of that forum? If I recall correctly, I know you're saying you're getting emails. I haven't seen those emails. But I do remember staff coming in front of us and presenting trend data that came out of forums that were held out there.
And may I answer that?
May I finish, please? Along with the principal coming to a meeting of the board and talking about the desire to create, am I thinking about the wrong school here? Weren't we looking at a K2, a 3-5, and a 6-8 sort of pods of learning on that campus? Am I?
It's not possible.
Am I crazy? Don't answer that question.
Through the chair. Through the chair, I mean, just for the whole edification board on this side, certainly there have been at least 2 community meetings. There have been numerous presentations related to this topic. There's a lot of, I would be too much to summarize all of it. What I can say is I'd be happy to direct staff to provide kind of a summary of what's been presented, links to the best information. It's going to take a little bit of time to put that together, but as quickly and briskly as possible, because there is obviously any time sensitivity about utilization of seats is important. I'm happy to assist the board in whatever way you'd like in terms of the information related to this piece.
For my edification, even if you can just provide us the dates that those were discussed with the board so I can go back and rewatch those meetings, and then get into that backup material in board docs. I don't need staff to do any work, just refresh my recollection on the date and I can look at that. And has the principal's view of how to best utilize that school, has that view changed at all? I remember him coming in front of the board and being pretty passionate about, and I will rewatch that when you get me that date. Am I thinking about the same location? Mm-hmm. Is it the same location? All right, just want to make sure I'm not losing my mind. Those would be my questions, please, and thank you.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Yes, Ms. Gittens.
Okay. In response to the meetings that were held, and I think I brought it up when staff presented the data from those meetings. And at that meeting, it was basically staff that attended. There were, I think, I counted maybe 10 community people, and I was there. And so, in my estimation, no offense on staff, I'm not attacking, but I am saying if we're looking at a school in the East Zone, just having the meetings there at that school is only going to attract certain people. And basically, it has been the teachers that have their students that attend there. My suggestion is that we have true open town halls throughout the community, because we're not talking about having those students at that school just come from right there. We're talking about opening this opportunity throughout the East Zone, and maybe other people want to send their children there. Because, for one, if they were able to have an early start, also eventually there will be a performing arts center there. So maybe there are people that want to have their children to come. But in regard to the results, yes, they did say keep it the same. When I was there that first meeting, over and over again, people were saying, just don't change it. Don't change it. And I think there was a discrepancy in not changing it as to whether, because there were so many suggestions, you know, different groups would be in this school and different there. The actuality of it is that building, the Old Lambs, is a middle school. In order to make it anything other than a middle school, we're going to be paying to retrofit, to put different age groups or whatever in there. It is very simple, just to make it a middle school. And I hear you that some people, and there was like 60 people, we're talking about quite a few other people in this community that have not been contacted. And I say to you, Ms. Patricia, the reason that I've gotten the comments and maybe you haven't is because it is my district and people talk with me about that, so.
May I, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
So can you send those emails to us? Because I think you sent out like a summary of those emails, but it's helpful for me to you know, like what you consider a lot might not be a lot. What you consider a lot might be, oh my gosh, how can she consider a lot? That's incredibly overwhelming. You know what I mean? Like,
when you
I'm a
consider
database,
okay.
I'm a database, you know that about me. I'm database, so it's just helpful for me to see it.
Okay, and may I continue to respond to your other comments? I have spoken with the principal, I've spoken with other people out there, and they basically, their bottom line is to do what's best for kids, and the principal has said, I will do whatever we need to do. The principal has said that having one school with one principal is a lot. And he has said that, and other people, administrators, has said that, you know, it needs to be broken up. And I just, honestly, getting to the crux of it, it seems like somewhere back in time, someone decided that we could take this whole campus and make it this big performing arts thing and have a performing arts center and all of that. And that's all well and good, but around in the area, that's not our need right now. Our need is seats. And our need is getting rid of the plethora of portables that we have and getting kids into a good situation. Now, I heard someone say, well, you know, who wants to go into the old Lambs building? Well, when you look at, if you look at all of the details that we were given yesterday and look through board docs, the front of it is going to be changed. The entrance will be changed. There will be upgrades. Yes, we could have done more, but it's between, do we add 1,000 seats or do we, you know, fix the HVAC right now or fix it later? So that is why I said I would support fixing it. We need the seats. Are there any other questions about it? My concern is next week when we're not here and we don't have a meeting and school choice goes on, and are we saying on school choice when people choose a middle school, are you putting down VPAA middle school? And the community has not had a chance to weigh in on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Gittens.
I have one more thing after that, after this discussion.
Okay, you want to go ahead and finish, and then I'll call on Ms. Jordan.
Well, no, you can call if it has to do with this, and then I'll do.
I was just going to say, isn't VBK is part middle school, is it not? Or am I losing my mind?
No, and may I answer?
Because it's K through 8.
May I answer to that? Yes, here's the thing, it is a K through 8. So you would have middle school students to stay at that K through 8. The draw for parents with that K through 8, and they've told me this, is that they can put their child in there from kindergarten and leave them in the same school until 8th grade. They know all the people know them, the teachers know them. They like that atmosphere.
Correct. And I heard that at the first meeting, which was
and the second,
a lot of people there that they wanted their kids to be there because of that reason.
And that's what they keep saying. And there was a concern that if they add the middle school in the back, what time would it start? That's going to be a real issue if you leave it all as VPA, Veterans Park, but you have the middle school starting at a different time. They were adamant about that.
The times
because you've got like teachers or staff or whatever that come at 7, they have their kids in school, but now their child has to have time between the early start and the late start to go to the school in the back. So anyway, I think you have one more.
So then are you finished?
Is this about?
Because we are at 3:27.
Yeah, I just want to respond. I think Ms. Gittens raises a good question, actually. What is the school going to be called when it goes up on the school choice? What have we told people about this school? I think I would ask us to direct the superintendent to provide information to us about how this school is going to be introduced to the community before the 17th. So,
and thank you for that. That was what I was getting at, is to be able to direct the superintendent, since we have a meeting tonight, to allow the community to participate in that process. But, on the 17th, you can at least let them know where we're headed. We've said this path and that path and this path, and nothing has been solidified. So I will. And I don't know, it's the 17th that we bring it up tonight, because we won't be here. So that's my concern.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gittens. Did you have something else?
Well, just real quick, that was one of my questions yesterday. It was in our agenda review. I asked, what is the name of the school? We haven't voted on what's the plan. That was basically what I was trying to get at. What is the plan? We're rushing this, but what's the plan? And that's, I didn't get really an answer. So I got some of answered. I wrote it down, but so thank you, Ms. Gittens, and thank you, Ms. Morgan.
Okay, all right. So then, Ms. Morgan, do you have?
Well, you have one more.
I have one more, yeah, and it's just the MLK. I sent it to you all.
Yes.
And the version that I sent you was vetted by everyone and both attorneys, Attorney Quick and Attorney Bruno, for legalities. And it basically just reads, on behalf of the Lee County School District, we resolve that in accordance with Dr. Martin Luther King's vision, quote, children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, end quote. All policies, training, teaching, communication programs, and activities provided or supported by this organization will align with that vision and any applicable federal, state, and general laws.
And Madam Chair, just so, when I took a look at it, I wasn't aware of the conversation that took place yesterday. I understand that there was a consensus to change resolve to acknowledge. Jen Schaefer did make me aware of that. So we'll make sure to make that revision in the, because I did watch, she showed me the video, I watched the video, and it looked like you guys all had a consensus, so we'll make sure that that.
What was the answer, though, with Attorney Bruno? Did she weigh in on the resolve or acknowledge, or?
I believe that, if I remember correctly, that during the discussion that she was on board with it being acknowledged.
Yes, she was, and that's why I'm saying, do we, if acknowledge, which was a consensus, is okay legally?
Yeah, it is. And so what'll be uploaded into the system on board docs will include the language acknowledge. It was just, I was not aware of that, but Jen made sure to make me aware of it, and I did watch that. So what's uploaded will be changed to acknowledge.
And are there any other questions or objections on this?
I just believe there was one with Ms. Vaughn who had stated the organization.
Yes, instead of saying organization, I'll say the school district of Lee County. That's right, yes.
Yes, I just remember her saying that.
Yeah, both of those changes were made, yes.
Thank you.
And that's the final thing I have. I will be bringing up this evening the other discussion that I brought up.
Thank you very much for that.
May I ask for clarification?
Yes, please.
So when you say bringing it up, what does that mean?
Basically making a motion that we can direct the superintendent to clarify the name of the school and the purpose and the time that I mentioned, like being an early school, prior to the 17th, so that people are aware, and I will write it and send it to you, but so that people are aware before school choice what their options might be.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Pacheco.
I need time in order to be able to support a motion. This is not sufficient time for me, and I'm not really even clear that that's an action the board can take. I think we've directed the superintendent to provide us with that information. I'm not qualified I'm not a planner. I'm not a school or
community plan. I'm not qualified to put this plan together and vote on it tonight. I don't want you to take that personally, but I'm not really even clear on what it is we can't name a school without going through our process.
But they have. They've already named a school, and they have it on all the forms and everything, and I've mentioned it several times, that why isn't the community involved in the naming of this school? And it has never happened.
Okay, so two wrongs don't make a right. We as a board have to follow our policies. We have a policy for school naming, and we can't complete that policy between now and tonight. I'm comfortable with what Ms. Morgan suggested, which is directing the superintendent to let the board know how that school will appear in student assignment documentation, what is being told to the community about that school, and if I may add, a timeline for resolving the issues that you brought to the table today.
Well, I would prefer to have the motion be to direct the superintendent to make sure that we follow the policy of naming a school. If we don't have a name of a school by the 17th, the community still can be told that there will be a middle school, and you will be able in the future to help to name that school. So I'm not saying that by the 17th they have to have a name. What I am saying is, do not put something out on school choice that the community has not been involved in and that we have not even approved according to our policy.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Mrs. Morgan.
Yeah, so, yeah, I was thinking that we have directed the superintendent to give us information. But now I also hear Ms. Gittens' question. I think we need to direct the superintendent to put it out as name to be determined, middle school. I don't see how else you get around it. I mean, we don't have clarity about the plan. But I also think that we can do that with a direction rather than have to have a motion tonight, but I think we need to give the superintendent some direction.
May I ask, is the direction done through consensus or is the direction done through motion?
Let's let Superintendent Savage respond.
Yeah, if I may just because I wanted to allow the board their opportunity to deliberate, I think what's really important is that there's a lot of information over a long period of time that's been presented on this topic, decisions, community involvement, staff recommendations. So it even went back prior to the prior administration. It's just a lot that's happened on this site. So it'd be very difficult for me to take us down that entire journey unaided. My hope is that we could provide a significant amount of information quickly to the board. We had some of the questions on this topic yesterday, so there were some of these answers that were verbalized. We've got some of it still in writing. We could pull some of that together so at least the board has what we have. It can be very easy to misconstrue, the conversation about the name and so forth. What the real priority for us was being able to mobilize construction work on that campus for the renovation work that had to happen. In terms of what the configuration of the school was, whether it served middle school students, intermediate grade students, whether it was one, as it used to be called, the mega school concept, or 3 separate schools by 3 separate administrations, some of those decisions have not been made, certainly not firmly, as I would also say the naming of the school. What may be confusing and probably adds to it is, in the short term, while the renovation work had to occur, the space, by function of what we have to communicate with the Florida Department of Education, is that all of, when the prior Lambs facility was moved off of that site to the new building, when that happened, the space that was left, what we're referring to as the old or the prior Lambs campus, could no longer be associated from a FISH MSID standpoint to the new facility. It had to be separated. So what it was done, what happened is it was consolidated as useful educational space for the current Veterans Park campus, which the students can walk freely to and from. It's very easy to do. They're that close in proximity. And again, I was principal there for 3 years, so I'm pretty well aware of that facility as well. I would just say on that particular campus, they were able to use some of that space. Originally, they were going to use some of the portables between that campus. Portables were not in an acceptable level of use. Those have since been remodeled. The great useful space that was already on that campus, it had to stay under air conditioning in order to keep the quality from degrading while the renovation plans were being made. That space was then allowed to be used. So technically, all of that space right now, if you were to look in the MSID through the state, it would all be referenced as currently Veterans Park campus. All of it would report under MSIDs of 0851, which is Veterans Park. That doesn't mean that stays that way. As the school goes through this master plan process, which is what Mr. Rickenbacker and Mr. Ross explained yesterday, as it goes through that process, it involves a number of folks as they really try to best utilize that facility. At the same time, there is some major renovation work that has to occur, things such as the plumbing, because it's an old campus, such as a lot of additional work, well beyond what was originally planned, which was paint and very just aesthetic improvements. So there's just a lot of information that I could go into on this, and I just don't know that it would, I can't get into things like the early start time. That requires, That's from an operational standpoint. We'd have to have transportation explain what the, just assigning buses to that piece. There's just so many additional elements that we could go into on that. So I would just say, if with the board's permission, as part of my responsibility to you all to give you information, I'll go back to staff. They're probably working on it as we speak already. They will put together comprehensive information, timelines, all the things that we have as quickly as possible so that you can have more of that information at your fingertips for all 7 board members. Would that be something you'd be amenable to, rather than directing a motion that may not even be feasible relative to what we're doing? I just have to make sure that I'm giving you all the best information. It's very difficult to sort it out right here at the board table like this.
Okay. So board members.
Could you just maybe just answer the one question then that Ms. Gittens had stated and Ms. Morgan alluded to as well? As far as student assignments, how will they be introducing that school? How will they be selling that school?
The decision has not been made, and here's why. The space, the stations that are being used on that campus currently are associated to Veterans Park as additional. It's not opening up the entire facility and saying we're going to fill it up with students. Gotcha. Because while I understand we want to use that space, and portables are always a consideration. Portables but they fill a valuable purpose. The most important thing is to build a school that can last 50 years or more. And that means you have to create a real powerful identity for that school. It's not a split decision. It has to be done thoughtfully. And that's really, and then the design and the work that goes into that has to support that vision for the longer term vision of the school. It's not something about we just need to put bodies in there as quickly as possible. They do happen to have intermediate age students in there right now because they don't have to switch classes. So the reason why they didn't use the middle school students, the intermediate grades 4 through 8 can all use roughly the same facilities. They're from a school specification standpoint, they're very, very similar. And that was even one of the conceptions talked about, was if they were to combine either into one larger K-8 site. The 2 different configurations that were discussed were either a K through 2 in the old primary area, the 3 through 5 intermediate in that particular area, and then the 6 or 8 in the other, or either of the 2 intermediate spaces could use that. Whether you had one master administration, a master principal with several associates, or separate principals for those 3 sites, those are all things that had to be determined. They have not been finalized. Not to mention, as Ms. Gittens mentioned, you very well could go through a full naming process and say, no, we really want this as its own separate school. There's so many other options that still exist. What we brought to the table today was making sure we can do the renovation work, the bones of the school that have to really be improved to bring that school up to what we would really want to do from a renovation standpoint, so that no matter whether you put intermediate children in there or junior high children in there, it's a much better situation than what it was. And there's been a lot more money put into that project than what was originally budgeted. And that doesn't even include the Performing Arts Auditorium, which at some point has obviously been promised that community for a long time. So that's the best I can in the short period of time to answer that question.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan?
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that effectively there is no student assignment for that school. It's a Veterans Park Academy that people sign up for, and based on how the student distribution goes, depends on who goes in what building. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Gittens?
And that is what I strongly disagree with.
Okay.
I would like to see where the state said that you could not have that as a separate school. I would like to see the data that said you cannot have a separate middle school. It must be all one school. And and just let me finish and I'll be done. Please do not shortchange our community again. We were shortchanged with the new lambs. As the old superintendent said, oh, if I had it to do again, I wouldn't do it that way. Well, you're trying to do it again. We are not involved in this process, and it's not okay to say the state said we couldn't, this was all one school. So my bottom line is, and if you recall at the beginning of the conversation, I said to staff, that I will vote for and approve the construction. This is not about the construction, but the name and configuration of that middle school space. That is what I am firmly going to stand on. And it could have come up later, but the fact that they are doing school choice, and I would bet you that somewhere on a list for school choice, it says Veterans Park Academy. And on their list, they will show that they will accept this many middle school students and sort them out. And still, you have not used the community, the board, we are not aware of that configuration.
And I may not be explaining this correctly, so through the chair, I just want to remind that what I'm not saying is that we can't, or the state in any way prohibits our ability to split. I was on the state MSID executive committee, so I used to be the one to make these decisions at the state level as part of this team, so I know everyone who sits at that table. You absolutely can split. You can have co-located campuses, and you could do it every year. There's no reason you couldn't. What I was simply trying to summarize is that for the present time, once the current campus left to another, once the Lambs MSID moved to another site, those seats still had to be reflected in our inventory of educational seats. And that's why it was changed to Veterans Park. That was done as a temporary, potentially move. Now, it could be something that the board wishes to do on a permanent basis, but that is not what I just want to make sure I clarify, Ms. Gittens. Definitely, that is not my intention, is to say that this is what we must do and the state restricts our ability to do it. We absolutely could come up with 3 MSIDs, 4 MSIDs. We could have, there's a lot of different things we could do, and through the master process, that was supposed to be derived from that work as well. So there's no decision made that says it must be Veterans Park proper. Now, for this immediate year, where they are going to be doing work and may continue to do work in certain parts of that building, that would be the recommendation, is that we maintain what we've brought forward, that it would be Veterans Park using some of that space, but that does not in any way bind our hands that we will forever, that it will be Veterans Park Mega School or anything along those lines.
We are talking about the 17th. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Ms. Morgan, do you have any further comments?
Not on that. I have my own comment. Okay.
You're up.
Thank you. So we've had our briefing on legal services, but I don't think the conversation is done. So I'm talking about a workshop. And what I'd like to do in anticipation of that workshop is ask the board if we can direct Ms. Millay and her group to seek, and I don't know what it's called, it's a special bid when there are not many qualified, it's a special kind of bid.
Sole source?
Yes, thank you, sole source. Ask for a sole source bid on Neola, and then also provide budget information, budget and actual, internal, external, attorneys and support staff, legal expenses 90/20, 2021, 21-22. That way, I think we can have a conversation. We've seen what the breakdown is of staff. We're going to have to talk about the cost of Neola. I think we need to see, what we have invested in thus far in terms of our, ability to change things or, whatever. So I'm just asking for the board to support me in directing the superintendent to do a sole source bid with Neola and some expenditure analysis for legal services as a background to our conversation at a future workshop about legal services. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you very much.
So should we take a consensus on that?
Okay, then board members. Mrs. Morgan made a request. Mrs. Morgan made a request to direct the superintendent to arrange for a sole source bid and a budget accounting for the legal services, and then to have a workshop to discuss the information received. And so, okay, so it's unanimous. And Attorney Clark, okay.
And Madam Chair, if I may, I did make a asked for the superintendent to direct him to do something, and it was never, it was not discussed by, or voted on by the rest of the board.
I thought he responded in saying that he was going to get the information that you requested as soon as possible. So is that,
Well,
am I,
What's a different ask?
okay. Do you want to repeat then what it is you want that's not?
It was to ask him to direct the superintendent as soon as possible to provide information on how the old Lambs building will appear on the 17th in school choice.
Thank you. Okay. That's a done deal.
Didn't take a consensus on it.
You
Okay.
don't need consensus on something that will take 5 minutes. It's only if it's over an hour and a half that we need consensus.
Okay, forget it.
Thank you for that clarification, Mrs. Patrica. Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to reserve my few comments for this evening. And now, Board Attorney comments. Attorney Quick.
Just want to say thank you for having me and Happy New Year to everybody. It's always good to see everyone. It's always good to be here. So, thank you. And I just want to mention, when I joked about the legal team not coming up to speak, I meant that as a compliment. So I sure hope it came off that way. Because, okay, just wanted to make sure.
And we thank you for being with us once again. It's always a pleasure to have you at the table with us. Thank you. And then, Dr. Savage.
Yes, thank you for indulging me for this one last comment. Basically, just it is a Happy New Year, but I was not so happy to have to open schools back up again with yet another major surge. Not a surprise to anyone. Obviously, it hasn't come up in this meeting so far, but I'd remiss if I didn't draw our attention to, and this is publicly available data. This is just, if you go to the cdc.gov website and look at our county case data, you can see everywhere in the country. I've talked about it numerous times, but sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so one of the things I wanted to show here was this little mountain that you kind of see here. It looks like a little series of mountains. This is a great visual representation of data of how the pandemic, since it began back in April of 2020, all the way through the present. This gives you a great visual context. Now, this isn't the school system. Very important to qualify. This is the county-wide data. But you can pull up any county in the country, and you can see the same type of information. So it's a great way to analyze how the pandemic has impacted our community. So all these little surges are all the ones that we'd had. They didn't feel little back when we were going through them in 2020 and 2021. However, this is the surge that we went through, which was the Delta surge when we opened up the start of the school year, Delta. So you could see it more than doubled the case rate of our prior pandemic surges. What's intriguing about the current surge of Omicron is that you can see we've already surpassed the highest case rate that we've ever had through the entirety of the life of the pandemic, and it's still up. It isn't plateaued at this point, so this is there. So that looks pretty dire when you see that mountain. But there are a couple positives. I would be remiss if I didn't share the positive news so far. And again, it's early. There's lots of opportunity for things to change. But the death rate here, if you'll see, is not even registering. So while the Delta variant, you saw this particular case rate really accelerate, you also saw the peak of the highest death rate that we had experienced in our county. What you have right now, it's not even registering. So that's under 10 essentially. It won't even register here. So that's something to note. But even some other things that are showing up is our positivity. You've heard that term thrown around many times. The positivity is the highest percent. Now again, that's important because that's reflective also of how many people are being tested. We know that's occurring, but the real one that I also wanted to show currently is the hospitalization. So if you just keep going down, you'll see the hospitalization rate. So while the Delta had a very high hospitalization rate, you do see that ours is not quite to that level. Now, when I met with the school principals and some of our district leaders that went through the same data, I just felt it was important to share it with you as well. We're not there yet. We don't really know. That's the challenge. it's not just the height of these little mountains, it's also the width of these mountains. That really gives you an indication of how long. So our Delta surge, when we had it at the start of the school year, was about 2 months, the month of August and the month of September. So when you got to October 1st, you'd see that we had really moved through that piece. There's no telling exactly how long this surge will last, but the one favorable we can see is it certainly matches up with what we've probably read in the news, we've heard. A lot of people are testing positive, a lot of people, the case rate is very high, but fortunately at this time, the severity, and maybe that's a function of vaccines, all those other factors, is not nearly as high. But again, it's still early on in that process. But this is something available to the entire public. I wanted to make sure folks are aware of this. In no way does the school district, author. This is just a cdc.gov piece. So for my comments, I wanted to share that, and I think I can take a question on that if you have. Ms. Patrica.
And Ms. Patrica.
So thank you for bringing this to our attention, putting it at the forefront. I'd like us to think about this in terms of those mountains, in terms of how those mountains hit our kids and the potential impact on their mental health. I was having a conversation with my youngest, and he's done. He's just completely done. He's like, you know what, it got bad, and then it got better, and now it's bad again, and is this ever going to be over? He's 14 years old. He doesn't have perspective. I think that to a certain extent, I've become almost immune to it as I see these mountains, but our kids are not immune to it. And so I fear that with each new wave and the fear that that brings to our kids, we'll see even more mental health impacts. And I'm certain that you and your staff are paying attention to that. But the more that we can do for them, the better. And the last thing I'll say is I brought my kids to one of those booster clinics that you all are advertising to parents in conjunction with Golisano Children's Hospital. It was fantastic. They did a wonderful job. They gave them Rice Krispie treats, which made my kids happy. So, see? Rice Krispie treats, pizza, tacos, it's all good. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Giovanelli.
So, and that leads me into my concern. A lot of parents will be looking to move their child to maybe leave virtual, and we have to make sure that we have the support there for that, because they're operating on a shoestring staff. Truthfully, we talk about shoestring budgets, but it's shoestring staff, and they're wearing multiple hats that. It's very difficult. So we really need to really look at that, because I believe that is going to be the future of learning. Students do well in that. I personally, I don't, but kids are being brought up and raised in with a computer in their hand. I think they're born with one. That's what they know, and that's what they're thriving in. And so we just got to make sure that we have the support there, that they thrive and excel. And so that's really important. So I'll just probably be saying that a lot. So thank you.
And if I may add to that, as our numbers keep increasing, of course, the best thing and the thing that I prefer is for kids to be in school. I think that's the best way for them to learn. However, as our enrollment increases in Leave Virtual School, I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that they have the staff and resources that they need so that they can accommodate as many students as possible. And the other thing is that, when they have to transfer them to Florida Virtual School, we're losing that FTE. So that's another consideration. So I hope that we are taking a long, hard look at that. Thank you. Ms. Jordan.
So I want to add something to that as well then, because I don't know if it's changed since the last that I've been down there. The space that they are working within is just insane. So what they're doing for our children and in the manner in which they have to do that, they definitely need to find or knock out some walls. I can get a sledgehammer, but they need some more space too.
They do need more space, and I'll add to that a little bit, because we actually walked, because what went through my head, what was close there was the cafeteria. There's that half wall. Yeah. There's actually a wall there, so they just need another little wall and be able to use, it needs to be a very versatile space, you know what I'm saying? And that's that little space there. And they were using it today to pass out work for kids that are signing up. So I think that that's a good little spot right now, but but of course, I want the experts to look at that, so I'm only looking at it going, hey, what about that? But so, but it's really important. Thank you for bringing that up, because I forgot, so thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Savage, for bringing that to our attention and updating us. And now, seeing no other business, this meeting is adjourned.